Hello everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to Sunya IAS. Today we are starting with the in-depth question answer discussion for paper 2 geography optional for mains 2025. The papers have been conducted already and very importantly, let me just do a quick recap. We have already done the paper analysis. When the paper was conducted, we had done analysis with respect to how many questions had come from which theme. We have already done that analysis. And with respect to the questions, okay, what are the themes that were asked, etc., that analysis we have done. We have also done the geography optional paper 1 question and answer discussion in the previous video. Now, today, I'm taking forward the discussion in part 3 of the series. That is the geography optional paper 2 in depth discussion. Here I'll be taking up the discussion with respect to questions and answers for geography optional paper 2. So you will learn what you could have written in those particular answers, how you can interlink the concepts from across the different units, how to interlink the thinkers, etc., in the answers. Especially in paper 2, I have seen, okay, especially when we are doing our 300 plus, okay, test series and the enrichment program, I have seen one common doubt. That is, ma'am, how to make geography optional paper 2 answers geographical in nature. That is your biggest struggle. Because those students who understand this, they specifically in geography optional paper 2 score even above 150, 160 marks. Whereas some students year on year basis are struggling to get even 100, 120 marks. Now that leap of 40, 50 marks can be taken with the help of integration of concepts from paper 1 into paper 2. Now, there can be two category of students. One who are starting with their geography optional, and second who have done their geography optional foundation, now are into test series, etc. Those students who are starting even their preparation, they would also learn today how to integrate the concepts. So now on, when you will study the foundation, especially geography optional paper 2, you would know, okay, how to interlink the concepts. Then only you are going to score more marks. Okay. Chalo, let's start the discussion. Let me first of all tell you very briefly, okay, about the objective of paper 2, how you should attempt paper 2. Now see, geography optional paper 2, many questions even this year. Okay, let's see the paper this year and let's try to find out, okay, what are the questions that I'm talking about specifically. Okay, for example, the questions entailing like question 2b, why are coral reefs in India most important with respect to its dynamic ecosystem. Okay, then nautical tourism. Okay, question on nautical tourism. Challenges of dairy sector in India. चलो ये तो फिर भी आप geographical बना सकते हो. Okay, then some other questions, let's say fox nuts, etc. Okay, now these are the questions I'm specifically hinting at. Now the themes which are coming in paper 2, especially this year and in the previous 3-4 years, we have seen they are contemporary themes and they are overlapping with lot of content from GS. So here is the major struggle, how to make the answers geographical in nature. So just quick pointers, especially in paper 2, you must add maps, schematics, diagrams. Okay, maps, regional maps, specifically of that region. अब उन्होंने पूछा है land utilization eastern ghats. You must focus on a small regional map from eastern ghats, isn't it so? अगर Foxnet पूछा है तो we know about the production. Okay, major producing states. So फटाफट से एक डायग्राम बना देंगे, छोटा सा रीजनल मैप. And wherever you have scope for drawing the pan India map, you can draw the pan India map. This is the first aspect. You must carefully brainstorm while you are attempting this paper 2. Okay, तो इसको मैं आपको दिखाऊंगी भी आज, बहुत सारे मैप्स तो आप लर्न करेंगे इसको. Second is interlinking paper 1 concepts into paper 2. For example, regional development and planning. Okay, now any question on RDP paper 2, you must include the concepts from paper 1, cumulative causation, growth pole, etc. in paper 2. Okay, then third, Thinkers and thoughts will make your geography optional paper 2 answers very geographical in perspective. That also we will learn today. And very, very importantly, okay, if you will take one particular theme from geography optional paper 2 and attempt it as a silo theme कि हम एग्रीकल्चर को सिर्फ एग्रीकल्चर की तरह डील कर रहे हैं, you will not be able to score very high marks. Treat all the themes in paper 2 in an interlinked manner. So any question on agriculture must compulsorily include the discussions from resources, regional development and planning. Also try to include some contemporary issues. Okay. For that matter of fact, paper 2 contemporary issues is not at all a singular unit. It has its applicability in all the units of paper 2. Okay. And with respect to mapping, okay, so mapping themes each and every year. Some themes you would know, some themes you do not know. Okay, just take the idea around that particular place. Okay, try to locate on the map. But if you do not know 2-3 entries, don't worry. Okay, just because you didn't knew those 2-3 entries, you would not be able to clear the mains examination. I hardly believe that. Okay, 2-3 एंट्री नहीं आ रहे तो 2-4 मार्क्स की ही तो बात है. आप उसको लेके इतना पैनिक मत करें. ठीक है, मैपिंग को करने के लिए 2 सोर्सेज रखें. पहला PYQ एंट्रीज, many PYQ entries they are repeated. Okay, and try to practice mapping regionally. नॉर्थ ईस्ट की एंट्रीज एक साथ मैप करो. ठीक है, नॉर्थ वेस्ट की एक साथ करो, एक्सेट्रा. So PYQ and the current affairs based entries. So we are giving you read of the day and we are also giving you geography का yearly current affairs booklet. तो ये दोनों sources आपके current affairs mapping entries के लिए sufficient होंगे. इसके beyond अगर 2-3 entries नहीं आती तो don't panic. Okay, try to score in 20 and 15 mark questions. That will give you an edge. चलो, let's start the discussion with section A. Now this is going to be a lengthy discussion that we will carry today. Okay, across multiple hours. तो मेरा एक सजेशन है आपको, आप पेपर साथ में रखो. अगर आपने मेंस दिया है इस साल तो भी आप सोचने की कोशिश करो कहाँ पे मेरे जो आंसर्स में है ज्योग्राफी लैगिंग था. ठीक है, एंड इफ यू आर गोइंग टू अटेम्प्ट नेक्स्ट ईयर देन ऑल्सो कीप द पेपर विद यू. इस साल का पेपर ले लो, प्रिंट निकलवा लो. ठीक है, दिस इज द पेपर एंड ऑल्सो कीप अ रजिस्टर विद यू सो दैट यू कैन जस्ट जॉट डाउन द नोट्स. ओके, because without making the notes mains examination is very difficult. आजकल आप लोग जो है iPad वगैरह पे notes बनाते हैं, which is fine, but you must not forget that practicing answer writing with paper and pen is extremely crucial. Okay, chalo, let's start the discussion. Question 1B, I'm not taking mapping. Okay, and also very importantly we will go sequentially from section A towards section B. Okay, now question 1B, referring to location and physical formation of karevas, highlight their economic significance. Okay, so this question is from physical settings. Now from physical settings, from soils. Now this has been a repeated pattern. Year on year basis, we see at least one question from soils. The theme can be varied. Okay, directly on soils, soil formation, etc. The theme could be varied. Okay, but yes, one theme, that is soil, is very, very, very important. So this year it was karevas. Now why karevas? Because karevas had been in news in the past 2-3 years. तो करेवास न्यूज में था तो फॉर्मेशन पूछा गया है, लोकेशन पूछा गया है, एंड करेवास डेफिनेटली इज अ पार्ट ऑफ योर सिलेबस एज वेल. ओके, सो दिस इज आल्सो एन इंटरलिंकेज विद द करंट अफेयर्स. नाउ लोकेशन you know, okay, and formation and their economic significance. This is a 10 marker question. Okay, for location you can show on a map, okay, where it is located. Just briefly mention what are karevas and focus one page on their economic and along with that even socio-economic importance. Okay, so what are karevas? Let's try to understand that. Okay, so kareva, that also is referred to as an elevated tableland. Okay, and this term that was first time used by Austin, okay, way back in 1800s for an unconsolidated to semi-consolidated sand clay conglomerate sequence. Okay, and they're also referred to as lacustrine deposits. Now these sediments occur as terraces, plateaus, and hence elevated tableland. Okay, and mounds. and rest over Paleozoic Mesozoic sediments of the Kashmir basin. And here you can show this particular area also, okay, that is with respect to location. Okay, so Karewa basin. तो ये डायग्राम अच्छा रहता अगर आपको ये पता होता. Showing also the Pir Panjal range, okay, and also the Great Himalayan range. So probably if you could have shown this, this would have given you an edge. छोटा सा डायग्राम हम बना सकते हैं. Okay, now very importantly, you can also mention about Terra and Peterson, because in their works there has been reference of Karevas. Okay, so hence you can also quote these thinkers. Now when we talk about Karevas, we know that the Karevas, the lacustrine deposits, okay, they are important because here itself it is associated with the cultivation of saffron. Okay, the cultivation of saffron is in the Kareva soils, although now we have seen a dispersion of the cultivation of saffron across the other places as well. Okay, artificially it is being cultivated even in labs. For example, recently there was a case study in Haryana, okay, that is cultivation of saffron across the artificial laboratories. Okay, but naturally this is determinism. Okay, so when you are talking about the economic importance, so this is determinism, and this is the agroecological regionalization. Okay, now see again in this map also we have shown the Kareva region. Okay, so Karevas which are famous for the saffron cultivation. Okay, especially in Pampore and Badherwa district of JNK. Okay, so that is why this region is very important, because of the particular soils, Kareva soils, which are suitable for the saffron cultivation. Okay, so hence you can mention that aspect also. Okay, now when we are talking about saffron, so that is one socio-economic importance and very important, because we are talking about saffron which is very highly priced, and after processing it can be even further highly priced. Okay, so you can just add on 1 or 2 points. So I'm giving a detailed discussion in few answers so you understand what all points you can add on in your discussions. Now see here, area, year production and yields, they are given for the saffron cultivation. Okay, so here we see from 1997 till 2015. Okay, the production, area and the yields, we are seeing that there has been a decline in the production. Okay, and area under cultivation also, that is also a concern, although it is economically important region for cultivation of saffron, but unfortunately these regions, this area, that is Karevas, okay, this area is getting diverted for infrastructure development, for road constructions. Okay, so hence this is also an important aspect which could be mentioned briefly. But yes, you can mention economic importance of the Kareva regions in terms of the production, okay, of the saffron. Now when we are talking about this particular aspect, okay, we had done this question. Okay, that is Kareva deposits के ऊपर हमने क्वेश्चन किया था, Karevas and their socio-economic importance. Okay, so this discussion we have already done. Now when we are talking about socio-economic significance, now please understand that how you need to make the interlinkages. You have told about the Karevas in context of soils, okay, AER, so associating it with agriculture. But because we are talking about saffron, so it is associated with agricultural diversification. But very importantly, with respect to physical settings, okay, Western Himalayan region, okay, limited prospects for agriculture, okay, length of growing period is also short. These are hilly areas, okay, these are not flat surfaces. Okay, so flat surfaces like your alluvial soil region. Okay, so here we can make a comparative analysis very briefly. Okay, so the alluvial soil region are those which are having the flat surfaces. So extensive cultivation can be done, but here in the hilly areas there is limited prospects for agriculture. So saffron cultivation is very important from the perspective of agricultural diversification, employment. Okay, per capita incomes, they are highly dependent on the saffron cultivation in this particular area. And very importantly, because we are particularly concerned about the socio-economic importance. Okay. So Kareva's saffron cultivation, this is also associated with the agro processing centers and exports. Agro processing centers have the potential for hierarchical growth pools. Isn't it an economic significance? Yes. Okay. You can use the concept of RP Mishra hierarchical growth pools. Okay. But apart from that, you can also associate this region with, okay, that is livestock, okay, and transhumans. Okay, wool, livestock, wool, dairy, agroforestry. Okay, and very importantly, recently there has been a shift towards even apiculture. Okay, so these regions are also seeing diversification towards the other agri and allied activities. Okay, all of them is a economic significance, which is also interlinked with the socio-economic significance. Okay, so you must include the discussion. Okay, not alone from the perspective of Kareva as in Kareva. Just think about that particular region. Now, regional development that is associated with the economic importance, isn't it so? So regional development when we are talking about, okay, so now start applying the planning principles. So what is the type of climatic conditions, what is the type of soils, okay, what is the land resource, water resource, etc., associated with that particular region, and what will be the particular importance of karevas in that context. Okay, you must not deal karevas in silos like karevas. Okay, saffron cultivation is a very limited aspect. Okay, so hence you can mention that also. So for example, here livestock rearing, okay, that has been taken as a case study also. And towards the conclusion, okay, apart from these economic socio-economic importances, towards the conclusion you must mention, okay, despite the fact that karevas are found only here, still it has faced a lot of land degradation and land conversion. Okay, so because of which we are seeing conversion of even kareva lands. Okay, and especially now what we are seeing in form of, okay, the floods, etc. So that would also be of very important, okay, role to play in the saffron cultivation, because now cloud bursts, flash floods are becoming a new phenomena in the hilly areas. Okay, so that will be impacting the saffron cultivation in the long run, and we have seen the conversion of the kareva lands into the other agriculture prospects. Farmers are moving away from saffron cultivation because of this only. So what once was, okay, an employment perspective, okay, and what we see is a push migration generally from the hilly areas. So this was acting as a Stouffer's intervention. But unfortunately, now we are seeing diversification away from saffron. Okay, that is a major concern. Okay, although it acted as a Stouffer's intervention, okay, intervening opportunity, but LULC modification, that is what is LULC, we'll be dealing it with, okay, again in our question on Eastern Ghats. So LULC is land use land cover modification. Okay. So we started from determinism, and you can end, okay, with stop and go determinism. Griffith Taylor. Okay. So what do we see? We see that in introduction we started with name of some thinkers who had given reference to the formation of Karevas, okay, in their earlier works, and then we also included determinism, okay. Probably you can include Ratzel, okay, and then towards the conclusion we included another concept from perspectives, that is stop and go determinism. So now you can see that how we are interlinking it with current affairs, with thinkers from thoughts, okay. I hope you are able to do that in many questions, okay. इसी से नंबर आ जाएगा बच्चों, ठीक है. मैप्स बना दिया हमने, एक छोटा सा रीजनल मैप भी बना दिया, कुछ थिंकर्स के नाम लिख दिए, so that would be sufficient. So this is with respect to question 1. Now question 2, this is a very interesting question and a very good question in the context that you could have written a lot of content in this question. Let's take the discussion. Okay, now let's read the question. How does the Himalayan ecosystem regulate the cropping pattern and agricultural activities in Himalayan region of India? Okay. So what do you think is this question from? This question is directly from theme of agriculture, right? And question primarily focuses on cropping pattern. But time and again I have been repeating that regional perspective is becoming important in both paper 1 and paper 2. Earlier the questions it used to come, if you can go through the PYQ booklet, you must understand the questions are very direct in nature, okay. Maybe cropping patterns पे एक short note आ गया, type of that. Now here this is specific agroclimatic region they are focusing on, also agro ecological region, Himalayan ecosystem की बात हो रही है. Are we not focusing on a particular ecosystem? Yes. Any theme that now onwards you are reading in either paper 1 or 2, you must read from a regional perspective, okay. So let's move forward. Himalayan ecosystem. So Himalayan ecosystem. Now because the term here itself is ecosystem, so interpretation should be organic unity. We're talking about landscape, physical and human. In integration. So how does it influences cropping patterns and agricultural activities? Now see, many times when we are discussing the case studies in the test series, I have focused on the regional perspective in a manner that I've told you to draw some small regional maps. For example, when the question is on agroecological regionalization, or when we are doing some case studies of agriculture, repeatedly I mentioned take the agroclimatic regionalization from a particular state, okay, or from a state where you belong to. Take some case studies so as to make the examiner feel कि आप geography optional के बच्चे हो, ठीक है. अब देखो, जैसे ये मैप लिया हमने, ठीक है, ये मैप आप ध्यान से देखो. दिस इज अ मैप ऑफ एग्रोक्लाइमेटिक जोन्स ऑफ हिमाचल प्रदेश, ओके. सो ACR, this is a map of ACR of Himachal Pradesh. Similarly, we have taken another map, Okay, this is ACR, Northwest India. Okay, so it is including the region of JNK, okay, Himachal, and also Uttarakhand, etc. Because the question was from Himalayan ecosystem, this could have been one example. Okay, even if you are not able to remember all the ACRs, okay, of JNK, okay, Uttarakhand, Himachal, but you must have one case study to shine your answer. एक अगर आपके पास अलग एग्जाम्पल होगा, ये ACR डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल पे हिमाचल के शायद ही कुछ बच्चे बना पाएंगे। अगर आप नहीं बनाया तो आपको 1 या 2 नंबर तो ज्यादा मिलेंगे ही। ठीक है, अच्छा अब देखो ACR बनाया है हमने। ठीक है, सो ब्लू दैट इज हाई हिल, ओके, टेम्परेट ड्राई, so we also know that this is rain shadow region, leeward side. Okay, so this is high hill, temperate dry. Okay, now brown, so this is high hills, temperate wet. Okay, so here it is wet, it is not dry. Okay, so this also includes some parts like the Pir Panjal ranges. Okay, then this is mid hills, subhumid. Okay, entailing districts like Mandi. Okay, and further down, further south is sub mountain low hills, that is subtropical. Okay, so lower Shivaliks. Now, if we know about these ACRs, can we classify the agricultural patterns, cropping patterns, and the activities which are suitable to these regions or not? Yes, very easily. चलो अब एक एग्जांपल के लिए देख लेते हैं, लाहौल एंड स्पीति, किन्नौर, ओके, एंड चंबा, these regions, okay, temperate dry, high hill. So high hill and temperate dry, so what type of crops would be suitable? Will sugar cane be suitable? No. Okay. Those crops which are suitable for rain shadow areas like millets, barley, etc., some vegetables, even high altitude snow covered areas, apple cultivation, etc., that is suitable here. Okay. So that is with respect to the cropping pattern, dependent upon the soils, because we are talking about the Himalayan ecosystem. Okay. So we are talking about the Himalayan ecosystem. So cropping pattern and agricultural activities that would depend on, okay. So this is again determinism. The cropping pattern and agricultural activities of man are a product of Earth's surface. So what is the Earth's surface here? Himalayan ecosystem. Simple. Okay. So type of soils, climate, topography, resources. Okay, topography that would include even, okay, surface, altitude, gradient, etc. So ये सारे factors and the other factors that would determine what would be the cropping pattern. High altitude, dry rain shadow areas. Here, the crops which are suitable are only those crops which can withstand temperature ranges. It can be very high temperature in morning and very low temperature in evening, or in the summers it can be a snow cover for 6 months. Okay, no precipitation at all, very less precipitation. Now the precipitation that we are witnessing in these areas, that is a deviation away from normal, that is not a normal. Okay, these areas, they are dry cold desert areas, and then the middle ranges, and then the subtropical ranges, okay, shivaliks, etc. So you can mention the cropping patterns in the agricultural activities. So high altitude areas, the agricultural activities, okay, that can be again, okay, transhumans in meadows. And when we are talking about cropping pattern, we are also talking about the length of the growing period. So in high altitude with the snow cover for 6 months, LGP can be as less as 120 days. Okay. Cropping which is only suitable for 2-3 months. Okay. Lack of availability of surface in the winter months. So similarly, we have shown an agroclimatic zones of northwest India. Okay, so JNK, okay, that is zone 7. So these are the zones 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so these are the zones. Okay, so zone 7, that is arid cold. So here the landscape is similar to this particular ACR, that is high hill temperate dry. Okay, then the semi arid, etc. So these particular zones you could have divided, maybe some of the zones you can remember, if not all, and that would give you a very good answer, a brilliant answer, because you have also included the concept, okay, proposed by Ratzel determinism. ये सब भी आपने लगा दिया है. Cropping pattern, agricultural activities. Okay, so agriculture is not only associated with the type of agriculture that is pursued in the flat plain areas. This agriculture is different. So here you can apply areal differentiation. Okay, क्वेश्चन पेपर 1 में तो आपको याद ही होगा. क्वेश्चन पेपर 1 में तो दे हैव आस्क्ड इट सेपरेटली, इजंट इट सो? खुद ही पूछा है रीजनल कंपोनेंट्स impacting regional synthesis, right? So here apply areal differentiation. That is how you make the answer a bit different. Okay, so this question was simple question because discuss. Okay, so one similar question we had taken up in one of the discussions. Discuss the climatological characteristics of Western Himalayan region and the impact on agriculture. Okay, so map, small region map, what are the climatic type, characteristics, and examples of the agricultural activity? So high altitude areas, millets, okay, etc. And nowadays, what are the changes in the climatic conditions? Because we are talking about ecosystem, so we are also concerned with changes in the climatic conditions. So rainfall, for example, in these seasons, okay, when it does not have a rainfall, why it is raining now? Because of the changes in the temperature, right? Because of which we have seen flash floods even in these high altitude areas. That will impact the agriculture substantially, because length of growing period that is very short here. Okay, इस तरीके से आप इसको इंटरलिंक करके थोड़ा सा क्लाइमेट चेंज वगैरह ऐड कर देते एकदम लास्ट में. Okay, because it would also impact the availability of water. Okay, that is the glacial melt water, okay, that was available during April and May, that is also impacted nowadays, and it is leading to failure of the crops there. So for example, recently there was a news that entire standing crop of cauliflower, ये हाई ऑल्टीट्यूड एरियाज में कॉलीफ्लावर, पोटैटो, पीस कल्टीवेशन होता है. ठीक है, तो अब क्या हुआ, दे हैड टू थ्रो अवे देयर एंटायर हार्वेस्ट ऑफ दिस ईयर. ओके, so because of these aspects, the Himalayan ecosystem is getting modified. Okay, and that is leading to such incidences of impact on the agricultural activities. Okay, so that you can add on as an aspect of, okay, that is anthropogenic modification of Himalayan ecosystem. Okay, so in that manner this answer could have been very comprehensive answer. Okay, even if you didn't had any special knowledge, even just by understanding the question with the given knowledge that you were having, you could have attempted this answer very well. Okay, next question, let's read that. Next question. Write a critically argued essay on nautical tourism and its infrastructure in India. Now see, the term nautical tourism itself should have given you a hint. What is the demand of question? And most probably आपने ठीक ही किया होगा. ठीक है, but because the question was critically argue, ठीक है, तो आपको pros भी लिखने हैं and cons भी लिखने हैं. What are the potentials? How much of it has been harnessed? Because the question is also talking about infrastructure in India. And if the potential has not been harnessed, then because of what reasons, and what is the potential which can be further capitulated? Okay, so nautical tourism. So nautical tourism, which is also called as water tourism, combines navigation with leisure activities, which might include traveling between different ports on the cruise ship, etc. Other activities which are included in the nautical tourism. Now, why this question would have come is probably because Lakshadweep, the region around Lakshadweep, Andaman has been in news in the past 2 3 years. But Lakshadweep was much in news, okay, because of multiple reasons. So Lakshadweep was particularly new. So probably this question would have been asked. Okay, so nautical tourism. Now, nautical tourism would also include the tourism, okay, that is entailing ocean, okay, marine and coastal, then lake tourism, tourism around rivers, okay. So coastal tourism, multiple activities, marine tourism, okay, over and under like scuba diving, etc. Over, okay, boat tour, sailing, etc. So all of this includes the nautical tourism. Okay. Now this question is very GS type question, isn't it so? So how to make that geographical in nature? Now that is what your question remains. Okay. Now when we are talking about this, so let's try to relate it with the different concepts that you know. Okay. Now see nautical tourism of knowing the concept that is dependent upon determinism. First the prospect should be there, then only we can pursue it, right? We can critically argue it from the perspective of determinism and possibilism. That is, by development of technology, technology diffusion. Understand? Okay. Then also the prospects can be realized. So determinism, availability of resources. First, we must have the accessibility to resources, isn't it so? Then only we can pursue the nautical tourism. If we are not having the accessibility to, okay, let's say the open waters, if there is no prospect of this type of tourism, then where will we pursue? Okay, the nautical tourism. So nautical tourism and the infrastructure development that necessarily entails determinism. Now, very importantly, okay, when we are talking about this type of tourism, there is a lot of potential, but much of which has not been harnessed. That is the problem. Okay, there is a lot of potential, but a lot of technological developments are yet to take place. So potential had not been harnessed as of yet. Okay, in many areas. But if the potential can be harnessed, then especially in the coastal areas, and in the island territories, it can lead to, okay, we are talking about development of tourism industry, it can lead to, okay, pursuance of different planning principles. So we are talking about the coastal areas, we are talking about the island areas vertical unity planning principle. Vertical unity planning principle. Coastal areas, okay, spatial unity. And if it is pursued sustainably, then we are also pursuing the sustainable development goals, SDG goals. Okay. So in that context, you can develop this interlinkages. Okay, that is with respect to RDP paper 1, we have applied the planning principles, we have applied some concepts from thoughts. Okay. So then you can make this answer geographical in perspective, and especially you must draw some map showing the potential areas where it has been harnessed and where there is still a lot of potential which can be harnessed. Okay, so a lot of potential that has not been harnessed yet, especially in the island territories. Okay, so in that manner you can particularly attempt this particular question. Now let's move to the lengthier questions, and let's try to understand what you could have written, which question you could have attempted, which question you could have at least maybe let go. Okay, जिसमें ज़्यादा content नहीं है. चलो 2A, explain the factors which contribute to the growth of India's pharmaceutical industries with specific reference to its concentration in western region of India. Now see, whenever there is question on industries, okay, immediately you can also associate it with, okay, probably the concepts from paper 1, Weber, okay, industries, growth pole, agglomeration, clustering, okay, all of that concepts also you can apply, okay, but depending upon the type of the question, demand of the question. The question is on pharmaceutical industries. Now see, they have asked you a locational aspect, particularly with respect to, okay, locational perspective. तो इन्होंने बोला है आपको with reference to concentration in western region of India. But we know that, okay, from our understanding about the pharmaceutical industries and the clusters which have developed, so this is a map which is showing this. Yes, there is a lot of concentration here, okay, around the western coast, which is fine. But you must also know that recently new pharmaceutical clusters that have also developed around, okay, foothills, especially around Baddi, Delhi NCR, okay, Rishikesh, Haridwar, etc. That is also emerging as an important pharmaceutical belt. Okay, so you can show this map, okay, pharmaceutical industries locational perspective, but you must mention location of pharmaceutical clusters in India, okay, on the western coast and the other parts of India. So naming थोड़ा सा different हो जाएगा. Okay, clusters along the western coast and other parts of India. So there has been a diffusion of technology because of which there has been a spread of industries. And initially few industries came up, for example, in Baddi, okay, in Haridwar, Pantnagar, okay. But it has also been associated with the availability of resources like land resources, government regulation, etc. Now, but because initially some industries came up and then eventually more and more industries they have come up, so now there is clustering, there is agglomeration. So you must know specifically around areas like Haridwar, Rishikesh, okay, Pantnagar, etc., that is in Uttarakhand. So there is a lot of clustering, but the in Himachal, so there is now clustering of the pharmaceutical industries. Okay, so in locational perspective I must suggest that yes, you can draw a map showing the clustering here because mostly of the historical factors and export based location, but there apart there are the other factors as well. But now there has been a dispersion of the industries and location in the other places as well across India. Okay, now, in introduction, you can just briefly mention about India being a large provider of the generic medicines. Okay, and in global pharmaceutical industries, we are making a lot of space. That has been mainly on the account of technology diffusion and low cost of the production. Okay, so hence it has led to a boost towards the Indian pharmaceutical industries. Okay, so you can mention this, but link it with the geographical concepts, technological diffusion, okay, diffusion of technology, cornucopia interventions, etc. Then only your answer would become thoda sa geographical in nature. Okay, very importantly, because of this technology diffusion itself, okay, a lot of medical tourism is also happening in India. And also now we are focusing on the manufacturing of the medical, okay, machinery products, you can say. जो आपके मेडिकल इक्विपमेंट्स होते हैं, दे आर मोस्टली इम्पोर्टेड. बट नाउ डेज, ओके, अर्लियर क्या होता था, असेंबली होती है इंडिया में, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग जो है बाहर होती है, एंड इट इज इम्पोर्टेड एंड देन असेंबल्ड एंड देन इट इज यूटिलाइज्ड. But nowadays we are also focusing on in-house production. So a lot of manufacturing, R&D, that is also happening. So probably that would also give a boost to medical tourism. But medical tourism is also associated with the demographic transition. Okay. So DTM stage 3. So there is a lot of improvement in the healthcare infrastructure. Okay, government intervention is also there. There is private sector participation, etc. So DTM stage 3, graph bhi yaad karo, birth rate, death rate. So death rate declines, okay, significantly because of better healthcare facilities. So medical tourism can be associated with that. Okay, and because of which again the pharmaceutical industry also gets a boost. Okay, so very importantly, apart from this, manufacturing of high quality medicines, okay, low price medicines, and hence a lot of business prospects, because nowadays we are seeing entrepreneurship, startups, that is also diffusion of technology itself. But now we are focusing on Rostov stages 3 and 4. Okay, so Rostov higher stages. So that is also why, okay, the boost to pharmaceutical industries, but particularly location towards Western India because of technological diffusion, because of historical perspectives, availability of resources, okay, export based location, etc. All of this has been very dominant factor which has resulted into dispersion of the industries across this particular area. Okay, so hence you can attempt this particular question very easily. That was a direct question that we had also discussed in Geo 300 plus. तो 20 मार्क्स के लिए आपके पास बहुत अच्छा कंटेंट था. डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चन है, इसमें बहुत ज्यादा कुछ लिंकेजेस भी नहीं है. लिंकेजेस आप पेपर 1 के साथ डेफिनेटली बना सकते हो. ओके, बट अच्छा क्वेश्चन है जिसमें आपके पास कंटेंट बहुत है. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन. नाउ दिस क्वेश्चन इज समथिंग which many of the students struggled. ये कंसेप्ट में क्या हम लिख सकते हैं, देखो. Why are coral reefs in India most important with respect to its dynamic ecosystem? Explore. Question can be traced to resources, marine resources, but also physical settings, okay, and contemporary issues. Because coral reef bleaching, climate change, all of that can be linked to also contemporary issues. अच्छा देखो, अब ऐसे क्वेश्चंस में क्या करना है, पहले तो ये समझ लेते हैं, और इसको समझने के लिए पहले ये समझ लेते हैं आंसर राइटिंग कैसे करना है. ठीक है, वी विल कम टू द डिस्कशन ऑफ दिस क्वेश्चन, बट लेट मी टेल यू वेरी ब्रीफली कि अगर कोई क्वेश्चन में आपको कंटेंट नहीं समझ में आ रहा है, थीम तो आपको पता है. ठीक है, कोरल रीफ इकोसिस्टम, आई हैव कंटेंट अराउंड दिस, व्हाट यू कैन राइट इन एन आंसर, हाउ यू शुड नो दैट. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल आइडेंटिफाई द की टर्म्स. आप की टर्म्स पकड़ लो. ठीक है, देन लिंक इट विद द यूनिट. कौन से यूनिट से पूछा गया है, तो प्राइमरी थीम आइडेंटिफाई कर लो. आइडेंटिफाई द प्राइमरी थीम एंड सब थीम्स. अब इसमें अगर हम देखें, सब थीम समझ में आ रहा है. डायनामिक इकोसिस्टम, कोरल रीफ्स, तो रिसोर्सेज से है, कंटेम्प्रेरी इशू से है, फिजिकल सेटिंग से है. सब थीम्स हमें समझ में आ गया. नाउ ट्राई टू लिंक द प्राइमरी थीम विद द सब थीम, देन यू वुड हैव अंडरस्टूड which units are to be interlinked in this particular question. सिंपल है ना. तो आप लिंक बना पाते डिफरेंट यूनिट्स का और आपका आंसर बन जाता. इन एनी क्वेश्चन इफ यू आर नॉट एबल टू अटेम्प्ट द आंसर, 10 मार्कर में तो करना ही है, उसमें आप ये ट्रिक करके देखो. ठीक है, अच्छा अब देखो, कोरल रीफ्स इन इंडिया, पहले लाइन उठा लेते हैं, कोरल रीफ्स इन इंडिया. तो प्रोबेबली यू कुड हैव स्टार्टेड विद द डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन. and map. Okay. In India, okay, most important with respect to its dynamic ecosystem. So dynamic ecosystem, what does that entail? So opposite to this would have been static ecosystem. For that matter of fact, is any ecosystem a static ecosystem? No. There is a constant change. That change can be the natural changes which are induced over a period of time, okay, because of the chronological sequential development, right? So for that matter of fact, no ecosystem is a static ecosystem, right? If the IPCC report is acknowledging that, okay, these are the climatic hotspots, the coral reef ecosystems, many places, okay, which are the coral reef islands, they are the climatic hotspots. So we must acknowledge that it is not a static ecosystem. So probably in the introduction, you could have started with that. Coral reefs in India and globally are not an static ecosystem, but a dynamic changing ecosystem, evolving ecosystem, because, okay, because of Anthropocene. So we have acknowledged the role of man in changing the ecosystems, and that has also been associated with a lot of biodiversity loss. Okay, so it is not a static ecosystem, but a changing ecosystem, a changing dynamic ecosystem. Okay, as also mentioned by the IPCC sixth report. This was also highlighted. Okay, that is the ecosystems all over the world, they are witnessing changes, okay, dynamic changes that can be also related with okay, the concept that had emerged during, okay, the radical revolution. So by 1970s and 80s we had acknowledged that, and now we have accepted that world is undergoing a lot of dynamic changes, especially with respect to the different ecosystems. Okay, so similarly, the coral reef ecosystems across India, they are also witnessing dynamic changes. Okay, in this manner, you can start and build a particular context for the question. Okay, are most important with respect to its dynamic ecosystem. Now, this was a very key term. Probably, if you would have missed this, then your entire answer would have been incomplete. Okay. Now there is an initial ecosystem, a landscape, which is now a modified landscape. Because of genre Devi, because of the ways of living, okay, which have modified the landscape. Okay, it has modified the landscape. Why it is most important? Now that was the question. Now this is a modified landscape because of the genre Devi, the imprints that the humans are leaving. Now why is it most important? Because this is an ecosystem. We are talking about the dependent species, okay, which are found in this particular ecosystem, which are dependent on this particular ecosystem. We are talking about very important ecosystem, okay, and more importantly, okay, when we are talking about this ecosystem, it is associated with many coastal areas, the island territories, which are interlinked with the other aspects in India, okay, be it the tourism, okay, be it with the other resources that are found here, be it the biological resources, okay, etc., all the other resources which are found here, tourism prospects, the socio-economic, okay, the ecological dependence on the coral reef ecosystem. So when this ecosystem becomes more and more dynamically changed, and the changes are happening very sporadically, okay, and it can be anticipated also by the fact that, okay, the Lakshadweep island chain that can all vanish through, okay, from the map of India itself, like it has been said even for Himalayan ecosystem, okay, recently that entire Himachal Pradesh might be wiped off from the map of India. Similarly, this is a concern for Lakshadweep because of rising sea level. So this is a dynamic ecosystem, it is changing and very rapidly. So that would impact the other activities which are dependent upon this particular ecosystem. It is providing us with certain services, okay. So hence, why it is most important, you could have written the answer from that perspective. So here, this is a map which is showing the coral reef zones. Now very importantly, you cannot draw all of them in the given condition of the examination, okay, but probably you can draw some of them, and especially this area, okay, this has witnessed a lot of dynamic changes. This is an area which will witness a lot of dynamic changes, especially this region also, it has witnessed a lot of dynamic changes, okay, and there are certain islands which have already disappeared, okay. So in that context, show the location, what are the human activities which are altering this ecosystem, what are the dynamic changes that we are, okay, introducing in this ecosystem because of our genre devi, and then how this is very important because it is linked with, okay, not only socio-economic but also the ecological aspects, the ecosystem services that we derive from these ecosystems, okay. So in that context you could have answered this particular question, okay. एंड वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, बहुत अच्छा क्वेश्चन था ये, इसमें आप जो है थोड़ा अपना जो है इसमें आप इंक्लूड कर सकते हो नॉलेज फ्रॉम पेपर 1 ऑल्सो, दैट इज इकोसिस्टम सर्विसेज, कंसेप्ट ऑफ इकोसिस्टम एक्सेट्रा, ये भी आप सब लगा सकते हो, ओके. सो आई होप दिस इज क्लियर टू यू, एंड देन टुवर्ड्स द conclusion you can include the discussion on, okay, the planning principle of ecological equilibrium. That is required for planning of such ecosystem like coral reef ecosystems, or else, okay, the changes that would be introduced would be irreplaceable, okay, we would modify the entire ecosystem in such a manner, okay, that is, then it would be irreplaceable, okay. Chalo, let's move to the next question. Next question: how does the agricultural sector of India confront with the contemporary physical and politico economic changes in different regions of country? Very interesting question. So question 2 could have been attempted easily, okay. Now see what we are trying to link here, okay. Agricultural sector. So we are talking about agriculture of India confront with the contemporary. This term is very important here, okay. So you need to link agriculture with contemporary. This is very important term, you cannot ignore it, okay. Contemporary physical and politico economic changes. In different regions of country, elucidate, okay. So different regions, you must take regional examples, especially because the agriculture sector, agricultural activities, they are not same across all parts of India. So here I have taken an agroecological regional map here, ठीक है, मैंने AER का मैप लिया है. I would suggest AER या ACR के साथ आप इसको relate करो, okay. So this theme can be traced from agriculture and even contemporary issues. Let's try to understand about this particular theme. चलो. So this map, probably you couldn't have drawn the entire 20 AER or 15 ACRs, but some of the AER you could have taken, okay, because here the question specifically mentioned about different regions of country, elucidate. अब देखो एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर बोला है कन्फ्रंट्स विद कंटेम्पररी चेंजेस, okay. So how do we develop the body of this answer? Agriculture sector, I'm explaining it to you in a very simple manner. Okay. Historical development, and contemporary development, okay. You can also use the concept of sequent occupants here. Now see, agriculture has developed historically, okay. Mostly it was on the account of determinism, okay. That is the fertile soils, water resources, okay, availability of land resources, etc., which initially led to, okay, the development of agriculture in India. And why do we have so many agroclimatic regionalization? Because of the suitable climate, because of the suitable deterministic factors. Okay, so climatic determinism that was important for the historical development of agriculture. Then post 1960s, 70s till the contemporary time, there have been many changes which have been introduced, and that can be associated with possibilism. Okay, so sequent occupants is the concept that you can use here in your answers. ठीक है, अब contemporary time में क्या हुआ है? That is the changes which have led to the sequential development of agriculture sector. Okay, be it with respect to the development of irrigation infrastructure, okay, infrastructure development, be it with respect to availability of better quality seeds, okay, land use. This is very very important, okay, because there have been land use modifications. Okay, for example, conversion into industries or settlements. Von Thunen zonation deviated. Link it with von Thunen zonation also. Now these are the changes, okay, which have led to the contemporary development of agriculture sector. You should have elaborated your answer from this perspective. ACR और AER क्या कह रहा था, कैसे एक पर्टिकुलर एरिया में एग्रीकल्चर का डेवलपमेंट होना चाहिए था, कौन सा एरिया सूटेबल था जहां लाइव स्टॉक फार्मिंग होनी चाहिए थी, which area was suitable for the rice cultivation, for sugarcane cultivation, but those areas which were not suitable for the development of agriculture in a manner that water intensive crops should not have been grown, but there crops like sugarcane have been grown. So that is the contemporary development in agriculture. Okay. So political, physical, and economic challenge changes that have impacted the agriculture sector. Okay. what are the government interventions, how the agriculture is developing in the contemporary scenario because of the land use changes, because of deviation away from ACR, which suggests a particular cropping pattern. Okay, for example, when we are talking about this region, okay, so this is hot semi-arid region, but the ACR or AER, have they been pursued here? No, that has been the physical and the economic changes. The mental maps are influencing the agriculture and not the deterministic factors. So that was the question here. Okay, so contemporary changes have been as per my mental maps. So contemporary development as per mental maps. Profit maximization. Okay, so changes in the cropping pattern and even land away from the agricultural land. So land usage has been modified. Land which is not as per now want union zonation, it is converted towards settlements. I hope this is clear to you. सिंपल सी बात है, ठीक है. तो इस तरीके से आप इस आंसर को खोल सकते हो. रीजनल एग्जांपल्स, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल टेक वन एग्जांपल ऑफ मराठवाड़ा. ओके, दिस रीजन one of the unsustainably developed agriculture areas. Okay, then probably this one zonation you could have taken. Okay, so in the contemporary times, a lot of dynamic changes because of the unsustainable utilization of fertilizers, pesticides, etc., as per mental maps. Okay, so this region, okay, again mention the agroecological regionalization or the ACR, and what are the contemporary changes, how this is modified as per man's thinking capacity, as per my mental map. Okay, so take three for example, एक यहाँ से ले लो, एक यहाँ से ले लो, एक आइलैंड रीजन से ले लो 19 and 20, ठीक है, कोस्टल रीजन से ले लो एक, ओके, देन एक हिमालयन रीजन से ले लो, चार पांच रीजन ले लो और बता दो कि क्या डायनामिक चेंजेस हुए हैं. इन दिस मैनर दिस आंसर कुड हैव बीन वेरी वेल रिटन. ठीक है, बट अगर आपने सिर्फ सिंपल लिख दिया कि एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर ऑफ इंडिया, ओके, दिस मच कंट्रीब्यूशन टू जीडीपी, दीज एक्टिविटीज एक्सेट्रा, तो आंसर होलिस्टिक नहीं बनेगा. ओके, so this was the question. This was a very simple question. Just आपको थोड़ा सा लिंक करना था. Next question. Okay, this question probably if you could not justify, then I would suggest do not write this answer. Leave this question. What is the pattern of population distribution of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes? Okay, in different parts of India. Compare their socio-economic problems with examples. Okay, so population distribution, so cultural settings, tribes, their problems, etc. This is that theme. A pattern of population distribution. So pattern of population distribution. So in the population distribution, this question was simply asking you about the distribution of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, how it is different in India. Okay, what is the pattern? Compare the socio-economic problems with example. बड़ी सिंपल सी बात है, आपके पास मैप भी है, आई थिंक आपने फाउंडेशन क्लासेस में भी किया होगा, तो आप डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन मैप में दिखा दो. ओके, and this is some data that we have taken from some research papers. That is about 72% of rural SC population reside in states like Andhra, Bihar, MP, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, UP, Bengal. Okay, as far as STs are concerned, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, Jharkhand, MP, Maharashtra, Odisha, Rajasthan, they account for a very large proportion, almost two-thirds of the population. Okay, now this is the data that I have taken from NIRDP, okay, National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj. So here you can get some good data. कुछ अच्छे आपको अगर डेटा वगैरह चाहिए तो आप इसको रेफर कर सकते हो. ये मैप आपके बुक्स में ही है बच्चों, ठीक है, तो माजिद हुसैन के भी एडिशन में ये मैप मिल जाएगा आपको, ठीक है, खुलर में भी मिल जाएगा. तो इस मैप से सिर्फ आप कुछ आई थिंक निकाल सकते हो, कुछ ट्राइब्स का नाम जब आप स्पेशल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन बता रहे हो. ओके, जस्ट सम ट्राइब्स, गारो, खासी, जयंतिया, ओके, भुटिया, गद्दी, बकरवाल, भील, ओके, एक्सेट्रा, गोंड, खोंड, एक्सेट्रा. तो आप कुछ ट्राइब्स के नाम मेंशन कर दो साथ में ही जहां आप स्पेशल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन बता रहे हो. ठीक है. ठीक है, and then their problems and challenges, okay, which you very well know. तो ये आंसर बहुत अच्छे से आप लिख सकते हो. So socio-economic problems that are associated first of all with most of these regions where their concentration, that is population distribution, is higher in concentration. We are not talking about the migrated ones. अब migration तो plain areas में भी हो गया है, ठीक है, from the tribal belts, and where there has been migration in the plain areas, there has been, okay, a dispersal of the population, but where there is major concentration, there still they are in early stages of Rostov, early stages of DTM. Link it with that. Okay. And much of their problems are associated with have and have nots, core periphery. Okay. Early stages of Rostov. Lack of technological diffusion. Okay. Early stages of DTM. So still high fertility rates, low levels of literacy. So that creates, okay, regional imbalances. That creates regional imbalances. Okay. So have and have not population, core periphery, peripheral areas. Okay. Now see, the problems arises from multiple perspective. One reason for the problems is that the locational perspective, where there is a higher concentration, their population dispersion is such that there is a higher concentration of their population. Okay, that is for example in hilly areas, in remote areas, remote coastal areas. Okay, dense forested areas, island areas, etc. Now in such regions, the problems are in situ, deterministic factors. Okay, lack of accessibility, okay, very high concentration of forested areas, so lack of development also, the development rose to early stages, like that. So these are the deterministic challenges. But apart from that, another problem is, okay, that is they have to be involved with the mainstream society. Now when we are talking about such concentration of population, you can imagine such areas which are very high altitude areas, okay, for example, and they are located in very remote locations, no accessibility to roads, okay, lack of infrastructure, lack of schooling facilities, etc. So that is in situ deterministic factors. यही आपका पेपर वन में भी क्वेश्चन था, रीजनल इम्बैलेंसेस इन सिटू एक्स सिटू, वो कंसेप्ट यहाँ लगा सकते थे आप. And the second set of factors, that is problems associated with their, okay, concentration, where they are concentrated, that is associated with ex-situ factors, lack of technological dispersion. Okay, so possibilistic factors are associated with much of their challenges. Okay. Lack of industrial development, okay, lack of infrastructure development, etc. Now how do you substantiate that? Okay, with the help of literacy rates, for example. Okay, so we are showing one graph which is showing the literacy rates, okay, and year on year basis census data. Okay, so earlier post independence it was low for, okay, the entire population bracket, but now still by 2011 it remains low, 56% only. Okay, for ST, SC it is only about 62. Okay, so this is one example, and that can be associated with the lack of the infrastructure development, okay, lack of the quality infrastructure, lack of availability of teachers, remote location, accessibility, etc. Then poverty. So again, you can see very high levels of poverty as per the recent census 2011 data. Okay, the recent census we will still have the data, but अभी जो last हमारे पास data है, so around 30-40% in comparison to SC and ST population. Okay, now you must take some regional example. For example, here you can take the high altitude area. Okay, that is this region which has the concentration of some tribes who are found here only. Okay, this is the Changtang region. So here there are Changpa tribes. So when we are talking about their challenges that they are encompassing, so this is high altitude area, isolated areas, deterministic factors. You can mention the mountain ranges, okay, and here the topography is such that there is lack of accessibility. Lack of accessibility, again determinism. Lack of harnessing of the potential local resources. Local resources have not been harnessed. Although there are certain local resources like livestock, okay. So milk processing, wool processing does has the potential which is now being harnessed at a very small scale, but that can be, okay, dispersed across this region. So this is one example. Okay, you can take this as a case study in context of challenges, but this region itself is providing us with solution because now small scale manufacturing setups have been established which are leading to processing of the locally available produce from livestock, okay, like wool processing, okay, pashmina processing, etc. So although the question was on the challenges and the problems, but towards the conclusion, towards the end, you can also mention some of the solutions. That is, we need to harness the potential of localized resources, okay, where the population concentration of SCs and STs is there, okay, locally available produce. So hence, in that context, you can answer this particular question. Next question. Highlight the characteristics of land utilization in Eastern Ghats region of India. What are the recent threats to land utilization methods in region? Now see, this is question from physical settings and physiographic regions. Okay. Now first of all, when we are talking about very important resource that is land. And again, because this question was from a particular region, you can apply regional synthesis. Now this patch of land can be used for, okay, agriculture, can be used for, okay, settlements. Probably this forested area. This is probably wetland. This area, this is probably under transportation, roads hai, railways hai, whatever. So these are the different categories of land utilization. How the land resources they are being utilized. Now historically, that land was underutilization for a particular activity. Probably that was a forested land. Probably that was a wetland. Now what is the question asking you? The question is asking you the recent threats, how it was being utilized, but now there are certain threats. That means now this land, okay, which was being utilized for certain activities, that was, okay, with respect to, for example, these activities, now that is converted. Okay. So this question, okay, in one of the earlier question I had mentioned, I will be talking about LULC modification. So this question is on LULC modification. दैट इज लैंड यूज लैंड कवर मॉडिफिकेशन बच्चों, ठीक है। अगर आपको याद होगा तो हमने एक केस स्टडी भी किया था, ठीक है, हमारे जब GO 300+ के आपके टेस्ट पेपर चल रहे थे तो उन्हीं टेस्ट में हमने एक केस स्टडी भी किया था। ओके, दैट इज कोंडापल्ली रिजर्व्स के ऊपर हमने किया था ये क्वेश्चन। तो कोंडापल्ली रिजर्व फॉरेस्ट इन ईस्टर्न घाट्स आंध्र प्रदेश, वहां पर हमने इसको डिटेल में किया था डिस्कशन को, ठीक है। कोंडापल्ली फॉरेस्ट रिजर्व, ओके, कोंडापल्ली। तो ये वही थीम है, दैट इज कैसे लैंड यूज कन्वर्जन हो रहा है, ठीक है। लैंड यूज, लैंड कवर, मॉडिफिकेशन, okay, use, that is now land is under which type of utilization, earlier it was under which type of utilization। हो सकता है पहले ये वेटलैंड था, ठीक है, अब इसको हमने कन्वर्ट कर दिया है सेटलमेंट्स में, ठीक है। लेट्स टेक अनदर कलर, probably this was wetland, now this is converted, this is under settlements now। Okay, that is what we are witnessing in Delhi NCR, in Bengaluru, etc. Now the question is specifically on Eastern Ghats, how the land utilization that is changing and how it is a threat, simply because, for example, if the conversion of green blue infrastructure that is taking place, open spaces, wetlands, forested areas, there has been a lot of development in the recent past years around Eastern Ghats, which is also leading to conversion of, okay, such areas, okay, like the reserve forested areas। So hence that would have very long term implications, there are limits to growth, okay। तो इस तरीके से आपको ये आंसर को करना था। तो इसको पहले से थोड़ा सा डेफिनेशन वगैरह आप लिख सकते हो। सो लैंड यूटिलाइजेशन refers to the process of strategically managing and allocating land resources for various purposes such as agriculture, urban development, forestry, conservation, infrastructure, etc., to meet the human needs and ensure environmental sustainability, okay। So this is kind of, okay, the landscape which was a natural landscape, now it is converted to a cultural landscape, okay, by our imprints that we leave on the landscape, okay। So that is the land utilization, that is, this is the cultural landscape now, by man's imprints on landscape, now which is modifying the land, so that land that was under wetland, now it is a converted area। So this is land use, land cover, what was the land utilized for and now what it is utilized for। So how it is leading to changes in the land cover, the land which was under forested area now is under agriculture area, the land which was under agriculture area is now under settlement area, so that is changes in the land cover, that was the entire question upon, okay। So here you should have discussed about how the land utilization that is changing in the recent years, okay, in the recent years the land utilization that is changing, okay, because of the activities, okay, that is the activities, how they are leading to modification of this entire landscape, and particularly taking into consideration the eastern ghats, ये क्वेश्चन था, okay? अच्छा, इसके ऊपर ये केस स्टडी हमने किया था कोंडापल्ली रिजर्व का, तो ये आप इंक्लूड कर सकते हो। आई एम शोइंग यू सर्टेन मैप्स टू गिव यू an idea what can be, okay, the discussion in the answer, but very importantly you might not be having such data। अभी तो हम आपको बता रहे हैं क्योंकि आपको सोल्यूशन दे रहे हैं, तो आपके पास हो सकता है कि ये डेटा नहीं है, ये केस स्टडीज नहीं है, डोंट वरी एट ऑल, ओके। You must be knowing some examples and case studies how there has been land conversion. So how now the land is being utilized and earlier how it was being utilized. Just try to attempt the answer from that, okay, understanding. Now see, this was a research paper, okay, recently which was published. I've taken data from 2 3 research papers, MDPI and ResearchGate. Now it is showing, okay, sequential development, that is 1920s, 1940s, okay, and recently by 2015 in Eastern Ghats, how LULC modifications have taken place, okay। You can see a lot of area, okay, that is now converted from forested area. That dark green is forested area and light green is scrubland. So forested area to scrubland, this is one type of conversion. Okay. And lot of conversion towards this yellow colored land, that is agriculture, and also diversion towards settlement. Now, even if you do not know what is the total proportion of the land which is converted, you should be knowing this, that this is a phenomena which is happening throughout India. So this must be happening here also. Okay. And it is always in news, conversion of the forested area, etc. So that is the changes in the land utilization. Okay. So by giving such spatial maps, etc., and this data, for example, you can see in 1920s the area under forest, that was around 44%, which is now reduced to around 27%. Okay. Such data and such maps, that can include the value addition in your answers. Okay. That is what was the demand of the question. I hope this is clear to you. This was a simple question, just uska interpretation आपको ठीक से पता होना चाहिए था. Okay. Next question. What are the challenges of dairy sector in India? Describe the contribution of bovine population. Okay. Now they have specifically asked about bovine population. तो आप सारा पूरा लाइव स्टॉक मत लिखो, ठीक है, उसमें बोवाइन के बारे में लिख देना स्पेसिफिकली, दैट इज कैटल, बफेलो, याक, मिथुन एक्सेट्रा. अदर लाइव स्टॉक को थोड़ा सा आप जस्ट एक मेंशन कर दो साइड बाय साइड. ओके. सो वी नो दैट इंडिया का लाइव स्टॉक पॉपुलेशन, that is very important from the perspective of, okay, dairy sector in India, and dairy sector contributes, okay, very largely to agriculture sector, agricultural GDP, and very important from the perspective of diversification. When we are talking about agriculture, there are certain challenges which have emerged historically in agriculture sector of India. That also we are clear, right? In the contemporary times, agriculture is facing a lot of challenges because of climate change, and there are regional issues in agriculture. So there, the dairy sector, okay, that is very important, but still there are challenges in dairy sector, okay, on account of deterministic factors and also on the account of possibilistic factors. And describe the contribution of the bovine population. So what are the challenges of the dairy sector in India? अब directly मत start कर दो challenges of dairy sector etc. First of all, mention something about the livestock sector, agriculture sector, okay, and agriculture sector में diversification from livestock etc. तो थोड़ा सा एक context दे दो. Okay, for example, you can mention the bovine population, which includes cattle, buffalo, mithun, yak. Okay, that is around 300 million in 2019, as per the last livestock census. Okay, so total bovine population and total livestock population. This you must be knowing. इंडिविजुअल नहीं दे सकते तो उसको आप स्किप कर सकते हो, बस आप थोड़ा सा एक आइडिया दे दो, और मैप में ना थोड़ा कंसंट्रेशन बता दो. जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल याक एक्सेट्रा, तो अब थोड़ा सा नॉर्थ वेस्टर्न हिमालयन रीजन, नॉर्थ ईस्टर्न हिमालयन, एक थोड़ा सा स्पेशल पर्सपेक्टिव आ जाएगा डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन. ओके. Now I just wanted to give you a comparative analysis. So milk production, we know that we are the largest producer, so around 240 million metric tons. This was the recent data in India. Comparing it with USA, which is only about 102, okay, and in India it is 240, okay. And we can also relate it with the historical development. So थोड़ा सा आप relate कर देना इसको, okay, from 1970s and 80s. With the introduction of the white revolution, Amul model, and etc., there has been increase in the production. Give that data also, production. (1960s and 2025). Chronological development of livestock sector. Okay. So how the production of milk, for example, has increased. At that time, it was very less, around 50, 60, and now it is around 240. And you can also make a compare between India and USA. Okay. Bovine population, that is substantially large. Employment, okay, that is also substantially large. But the dairy exports, you can see. Okay. So dairy exports, even though, despite the fact that when we compare it between India and USA, in USA, okay, despite the fact that the dairy herd size that is low, milk production is low, but you can see the disproportionate large export value. Okay, so that is on account of many factors, especially the low productivity in case of Indian breeds. Okay, now when you have discussed this, okay, now see the question is asking you both challenges and contribution. So first of all, write the contributions and then mention about the challenges. Contribution in the diversification plus prospects as growth poles, like the Amul model. Okay, very important, associated with gender aspects. Okay, again welfare approach. Hill area development. Who gets what, where, and how. Okay, all these aspects you can include in the answer. Okay, with respect to contribution and challenges, mostly on the account of low productivity. Diseases, labor productivity, lack of mechanization, lack of technological diffusion. Okay. So in that manner, you can attempt this particular question, but you must integrate it with the concepts from paper one, that is probably planning principles. You can associate it with determinism, possibilism, etc. So challenges like inadequate facilities for transportation, processing, marketing, okay, lack of technological diffusion, lack of spatial integration, low milk productivity, unorganized sector mostly, poor veterinary services, lack of remunerative pricing, especially the Amul model that has not penetrated across the other states as well. Okay, that model has not been properly, okay, not penetrated into other states. Lack of scientific management, small scale milk production, shortage of feed and fodder, which is complicated by climate change, okay, etc. And conversion of these pasture lands, okay, into settlements, etc. So all of that brings a lot of challenges to the dairy sector. Okay, so we have already done, okay, this data, that is what is the contribution from the livestock sector. Okay, but still the main challenges, that is like low yields for Indian breeds, it is only about 1.64 tons per year. Okay, USA it is around 11 tons, Europe around 7 tons, New Zealand around 5 tons, you can approximate it. So per cow milk yield, that is one of a major challenge. So what do we require? We require initiatives. Okay, initiatives you are knowing, Gokul mission, etc. Livestock के लिए जो भी हमारे जो इनिशिएटिव्स हैं वो आप इंक्लूड कर सकते हो, बट ऑलवेज इंटीग्रेटेड विद द कंसेप्ट फ्रॉम पेपर वन. Okay, technological integration that is required here. Okay, so in that manner you can attempt this particular question. Let's move to the next question. Socio-political landscape in India is a result of regional consciousness creating interstate disputes. Discuss with region specific examples. Okay, so regional consciousness, this is one important key term. So socio-political landscape in India. Okay, so here we are talking about landscape in context of socio-political landscape. okay, which is associated with the regional consciousness. The socio-political landscape is a result of the regional consciousness. Okay. Now you have to discuss it in context of the different examples from across different parts of India. So this is from political aspects. You can associate it with one of the theme, that is interstate issues, regional consciousness, etc. Now see, these are the important terms. Let's try to decodify them. Okay. Now when we talk about regional consciousness, so it is a feeling of solidarity, shared identity, and belonging among the people within a specific geographical area, often based on common language, culture, ethnicity, or shared history, and can also lead to regionalism as a conscious expression of that identity and a desire for regional welfare or even for autonomy. Okay. Now here important terms that we have used is common language, culture, ethnicity, and shared historical perspectives, okay, within a specific geographical area can lead to regional consciousness. Okay. So that can be also associated with socio-political or not? Yes. Okay. So for example, socio and political. For example, common culture, okay, language, ethnicity, political, okay, probably geographical isolation, etc. Historical aspect, historical perspective can be there. Now, all these factors can lead to regional consciousness development in that particular region. Okay, region 1, region 2, region 3. Okay, so that can lead to, okay, the regional consciousness, and that can be one of the reason for interstate disputes. Okay, so that would also depend upon the intensity of that regional consciousness. Okay, so I hope this context is clear to you. Okay, and this definition is also clear to you. Now when we are talking about the social and political aspects, okay, I've given you a brief hint about it. Let's understand about it. For example, culture and values, okay, that is common shared beliefs, traditions, behaviors, our mental maps, okay, that further would impact, okay, my belongingness to that area. Okay, so common culture, common traits, common shared beliefs, behaviors, our mental maps, and you can also extend it to topophilia. Okay, social norms, common social norms, community structures, how the communities behave in that particular social structure. Okay, how they are organized, what is the relationship within them. Okay, education, etc. So these are the social aspects, political aspects. Okay, government policies, political stability, that would also, okay, be dependent upon the connectivity aspects. Okay, whether it is a very core periphery like the northeastern region, like Jammu and Kashmir region, etc. Okay, laws and regulation, governance, etc. So these aspects that are intertwined with the regional consciousness also. Okay, so that we have seen with respect to some parts of India, and that is what you needed to, okay, attempt in this particular answer. So for example, in one of the questions we had taken up this theme, okay, regional consciousness. For example, across the hilly regions, okay, wherever this is the case, we had taken one or two particular case in that context. Okay, for example, northeast region, you can take up one particular example. Okay, smaller maps, okay, which is depicting the linguistic diversity, okay, etc., which can also be related with the regional consciousness. तो आप इसको कुछ चार पांच एग्जांपल ले लेते हैं, एक ईस्टर्न रीजन, ठीक है, एक आपका नॉर्थ वेस्टर्न रीजन प्लेन एरिया एक्सेट्रा, ठीक है, एक आपका पेनिनसुलर रीजन, और आप इसको विद द हेल्प ऑफ एग्जांपल्स इसको जस्टिफाई कर सकते हो. ओके, so this is a simple question. But yes, the language which is used in this answer should be, okay, which should be correct. तो एक्सट्रीम वर्ड्स वगैरह उसको आप थोड़ा सा अवॉइड कर सकते हो. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन. Why cottage industries in India are an integral part of socio-economic structures? Okay, because this is associated with the Rostov stages. So Rostov stage 1 and 2, and that had been the stage of Indian economic development since, okay, the independence time period. The early Rostov stages and the cottage industries can be associated with that. So hence Indian socio-economic structure, that is an, okay, interlinkage between cottage industries and the socio-economic structure of India. Okay, simple. So assess this with reference of different types of cottage industries. अब आप इसको वेबर के साथ में भी एसोसिएट कर सकते हो, associated with Weber, because the cottage industries which are small scaled, okay, and can be associated with small scale manufacturing, okay, more operated from a home rather than a purpose built facility. आपकी large scale assembly lines नहीं है, very small scale production है, okay, and they are mostly on the basis of local available resource. So for example, wooden artifacts, silk based, cotton based, small scale, can be associated with agricultural, food processing, etc. Now, all these, they are small scale ones and they are associated with the early stages of Rostov, early stages of socio-economic development. So, hence, has been an integral part, okay, of Indian economy. And very importantly, okay, they engage the population, they provide the employment opportunity to population at the scale of family level, small scale level. Okay, so does not require a lot of high end skilling. The traditional skilling part that continues, okay, generation by generation. For example, wooden artifacts, etc., weaving, knitting, and all of that. So hence they have become an integral part of the Indian economy, okay, and integral part of socio-economic structure, okay, social aspect, because it carries the traditional culture, values, okay, skilling that has been carried on from generation. You have lot of examples, okay, you can also use those examples which have been given the GI tag, etc. So take certain example, 4 5 examples from across India, just justifying this aspect with respect to cottage industries, that would be sufficient. Okay, why they're important? Because they provide employment, they check migration, okay, so again here they provide intervening opportunities to for, okay, can help in addressing the regional imbalances, okay, and because employment opportunities, they are present here because industrial development is happening here, so can lead to higher stages of Rostov. Okay. And very importantly, it is integral part of the rural development, okay, and it helps on the people who are based on the cottage industries earn additional income. So agricultural diversification भी हो सकता है, ठीक है, on the basis of locally available produce. And in wake of climate change and how people are out migrating from rural areas away from agrarian economy, okay, they want to move out because of low per capita incomes, because agriculture is becoming unsustainable. Here again cottage industries, they are very important, okay. So here you can apply this concept, regional imbalances, again core periphery, okay, and utilization of local resources. So optimal utilization of local resource. For example, okay, like when we are talking about apple cultivation in high altitude areas, now it is being thrown away, okay, because of lack of transportation. Currently, these areas, because of climate change, they are witnessing, okay, flash floods and cloudburst of very high intensity on a very regular basis. Okay, so in that way, because of lack of transportation is there, सारे highways जो हैं they have been blocked currently, because of which they are throwing away their cultivation. Now, why does that happen? Because of lack of processing and cold storage which is available there, right? Now, if there is availability of processing facility and such village scale cottage industries they are operable, then this wastage of the agriculture produce would also not happen. Okay, so agriculture industries are very important from the perspective of climate change and how they can also lead to, okay, increase of the per capita incomes at the village level. So it can lead to again hierarchical growth pole development. So give some examples that you could have done. Okay, so handloom, silk industries, okay, so Banaras silk, Kanchipuram, etc., leather, handicrafts, etc. And especially when we are talking about the deterministic problems, okay, all areas in agriculture they are not equally prosperous, like the plain fertile areas, like the Indo-Gangetic plains. So hence, in high altitude areas, okay, or in the coastal areas for that matter of fact, desert areas, okay, these cottage industries can be a viable option. We have done this particular question. अब एक छोटा सा मैप बना के बता सकते हो, okay, what are the prospects of the cottage industries, and then you can take certain case studies. For example, silk based industries in northeast India. Okay, एक लेह बेरी है, लेह बेरी, so that had become that had become famous in the past few years, और वो न्यूज में था लास्ट ईयर. ठीक है, ले बेरी होती है एक, तो वो भी एक तरीके से कॉटेज बेस्ड इंडस्ट्री हो सकता है इन सच हाई अल्टीट्यूड एरियाज, ओके, वेयर देयर इज लैक ऑफ डाइवर्सिफिकेशन प्रोस्पेक्ट्स. बहुत सारे एरियाज में बहुत ज़्यादा एग्रीकल्चर का डाइवर्सिफिकेशन ऑप्शंस नहीं है. In those areas, cottage industries can be a good option. Next question, very important question, that is from the topic of settlements and rural settlements. So, rural settlements in India are highly diversified, okay, due to both physical and cultural factors. So, rural settlements are highly diversified due to both physical and cultural factors. Justify the statement with example. ये बहुत कंटेंट है आपके पास लिखने के लिए. Now see, rural settlements, they are highly diversified. Okay, because of physical and cultural factors. Now this question is on organic unity. Now rural settlements, the rural area landscape, okay, that is a function of integration of both the physical aspects and the cultural aspects. Okay, the cultural aspects which will include, okay, the language, the cultural traits, okay, that would include what are the ways of life of the population there, okay, what are the type of settlements that would depend upon the cultural aspects or not. Yes, for example, in hilly areas it is wooden architecture, in desert areas it is mud houses, in northeast it is based on stilts because of heavy rainfall, but now because of which the cultural traits have developed upon that and the cultural settings that is different. Okay, and the physical factors, they are different or not? Definitely yes, the deterministic factors, okay, that is the desert area, the coastal areas, etc. So here the settlements would be dependent upon the physical aspects as well. Okay, that is, for example, amount of precipitation, okay, whether it is leeward or the windward side, whether it is a coastal area, inland area, plateau area, etc. So an integration of both of them would give us, okay, द लैंडस्केप ऑफ द रूरल सेटलमेंट्स. अब ये वो क्वेश्चन नहीं था कि आप इसमें सर्कुलर पैटर्न और रेक्टेंगुलर पैटर्न बस इतना लिख के आ जाते और आपका काम हो जाएगा, नहीं. Now see, circular, rectangular, that pattern, that is compact pattern, that is just one example here. Okay, so compact settlement That is just one example, especially in the plain, okay, plain rural settlements in fertile alluvial belt. But there will be the other types, dispersed. Okay. So now that is on the account of diversified cultural and physical factors. Okay. Houses, which are wooden houses, wooden settlements. Okay. How the morphology has emerged. So this is not alone about the pattern. The pattern is fine. You must also talk about morphology. Okay. So you must talk about pattern. You must talk about morphology. You must talk about the building material. Where are the settlements located in that landscape location, etc. All of this. This is what is the question's demand. It is not alone about what is the pattern of rural settlements. तो ये एक mistake बच्चों ने किया है, patterns बना के आ गए. Patterns is fine, but pattern is only one aspect, because physical and cultural aspects will they impact only the patterns of the rural settlement? No, pattern of rural settlement is only just one aspect of the morphology. Okay? So this is an interlinkage between physical and cultural aspect. Okay, when we are talking about the rural settlements, the entire morphology. For example, where are the agriculture fields? Where are the settlements? Okay, so where are the residences? Where is the agriculture field? Is it integrated now? So now that is a modified landscape. Okay, that is what is happening in hilly areas. Earlier, okay, the fields were different, the settlements were different. Like that, settlements were in the plain areas, valley areas. Okay, but nowadays there is integration. Fields are within the settlements. Okay, so that is because of the cultural aspects. Because the settlements, they're spreading even into high altitude areas where we witnessed isolated settlements. But now there is a modification of that. Okay, so earlier where there were linear settlements. Okay, now see the linear settlements on the account of physical and cultural aspect. Physical aspect because okay, proper connectivity is there, plain area, okay, plain patch of land is there, and on which we developed the cultural aspect, road transportation. So hence it was a linear type of a settlement, rural settlement. But probably now it is okay, no more a linear settlement because of the conurbation developments. So what is happening? These urban and rural integration takes place. So it is now spreading into a dense rural settlement. So it is a change of morphology because of the urban rural interlinkages. So that is also okay, the aspect of cultural factors. And then the isolated and dispersed ones, they are now becoming more compact like that. So probably you can just start with rural settlements, and then you can mention how the integration of human and physical aspects, they would impact the rural settlements. Okay, so that was the question. And then you must in this answer mention, for example, when we are talking about cultural factors, so physical factors, determinism. Okay, so simple man is a product of earth's surface, and then cultural factors, that is on the account of the man's possibilism. So as we are moving towards higher stages of roster of development, as there is migration, so from urban to rural, higher stages of Zelensky development, higher stages of Zelensky migration. Okay, so Zelensky migration, counter urbanization bhi ho raha hai, right? So that also impacts the rural settlements. Okay, and all of these are leading to transformation of the rural settlements. So that was the question. Okay, for example, this is a diagram that we have taken from MDPI research paper. Okay, so this is the settlement, arable lands, grassland, a factory, etc. Okay, so this was a rural settlement, a rural landscape. Okay, which has the production function, small scale, maybe manufacturing small scale ones. Okay, then the production which is also coming from arable lands. This is the living function of this particular landscape. Ecological functions, grasslands, okay, wetlands, etc. Okay, so natural village area which provides the local villages with different functions. So that is why it is an integration of, okay, natural, physical, and the cultural factors. So this is the entire landscape. Okay, and with the contemporary changes it is getting modified. तो उस तरीके से आप इसको different regions में लेकर के आप इसको बता सकते हो. एक example के लिए देखते हैं, जैसे for example when we are talking about rural settlements, okay, the cultural and the physical aspects. So you can talk about contradictory example, hilly areas and desert area. So here it would be dispersed, here it is compact around a water body. So like that you can justify this particular answer. Now let's start with the discussion of section B. Okay, we'll take a 5 minutes break and we will resume our discussion in 5 minutes. Okay, now we are going to take the discussion on section B. Okay, we will start in 5 minutes with respect to the discussion of section B. Okay, just a 5 minute break. अभी ठीक है. So, okay, I think the voice was not coming. Okay, now it is clear. Okay, so these are multiple combinations of urban and peri-urban area. I must repeat what I had said because I think the voice was not coming. Okay, rural urban fringe can be delineated with certain examples from India. Okay, here I have told you about the RUF, which is a transition zone, so you can define it. Okay, and then very importantly, okay, it earlier provided functions as per the von Thunen zonation. Earlier it was zonation as per von Thunen, but now this is a transition zone. This is having multiple functions. Okay, so here now it is no more agriculture, it is conversion of agriculture land into settlements. Okay, so this is RUF now. That is land use patterns that have changed. Okay, population density that is changed, and that is how we delineate it. Okay, I've just given you the definition here. Okay, that is how do we define it and what are the methods for delineating it. Okay, so when we delineate it, either with the help of direct field observations or with statistical analysis methods, and these are the key indicators for delineation. That is what we have discussed now. Okay, now when we are talking about the RUF, okay, there can be multiple combinations of urban and peri-urban areas. So this diagram also you can include. So it can be monocentric. Okay, there can be two centers. There can be one center which is very prominent and which is expanding, like Delhi NCR. Okay, it can be polycentric, etc. And very importantly, you must give some examples, okay, from across different parts of India. And my suggestion would be give certain repercussions of such transitions. For example, this current affair based, okay, sentence could have been a good introducing sentence here. आप introduction में ही लिख सकते थे, that is emergence of RUF is also associated with a lot of problems that we are witnessing around Delhi NCR, Bengaluru, okay, etc. recently, as we have seen in case of flash floods, urban floods, etc. तो आपका एक अच्छा हो सकता था एक डिस्कशन पॉइंट आपके इंट्रोडक्शन का. Now again, this is a 10 marker question. Okay, so spatial distribution of religious groups in India does not show any specific pattern. Illustrate with arguments. Now the trap in this statement was does not show any specific pattern. Okay, so आप उस context में नहीं लिखने लग जाना कि it shows a specific pattern, because the question itself is stating that it does not show a specific pattern. Okay, so that you have to justify with arguments and illustrate. Simple सी बात है, आप एक मैप में भी दिखा सकते हो, आपके पास जो डेटा है उससे भी इसको justify कर सकते हो, but the question demand is simple: cultural settings, religious aspects. So religious groups, they do not show a specific pattern, no specific pattern. So it shows a dispersion. I'm giving you certain data which you could have used. Okay, this data is from PEW Research Center. Okay. Now see, population density, that is variable. So spatial distribution of population, that is variable across India. And similarly, we see that in case of religious groups as well. Okay, that could be the introduction. Now, for example, the most populous states, UP, recorded close to 200 million inhabitants in 2011 census, while the southern, okay, for example, southern parts like Lakshadweep, okay, which had very less population, which has very less population, okay, total population. Now, very importantly, the religious groups also similarly, like the population distribution, has been variable across different parts of country. Okay, so population distribution के ऊपर आपको कुछ data देना पड़ेगा. So this research paper states that religious groups live in a wide variety of local context in a way that they are not apparent in the national pattern, okay, which has been discussed. So there is no particular pattern. In some cases, many millions members of a certain group live as a religious minority in a very large state. So ex-religious, okay, group that lives as a religious minority but in a very large state. And in others, a much smaller number of adherents form a large majority in one of the smaller states. ठीक है, वहाँ उनका population majority में है, so there is no specific pattern. For example, Muslims, okay, are a majority in small area like Lakshadweep, okay, and in JNK, that is a majority. Okay, so this is a data you can see with respect to the different religious groups, and it shows that there is no specific pattern. Okay, In some areas, for example, even Hindus, they are present in lesser proportion, whereas in the other areas they are proportion in larger number. So hence we do not have a specific pattern in that context. 10 मार्कर क्वेश्चन है, इसी के अराउंड इसको वीव करके लिखना. मैप बना सकते हो तो बना लेना, नहीं तो जस्ट गिव सर्टेन डेटा, दैट वुड बी सफिशिएंट हियर. ओके, नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन. So this is from RDP. Watershed is the most appropriate spatial unit for planning. Comment RDP. Okay, this is from watershed development. And watershed development is a very important PYQ which has appeared in multiple times previously also in many question papers in geography optional. So why it is an appropriate spatial unit? That was the question. So first of all, we can start with the definition. And why it is important? Because it talks about organic unity. When we are talking about watershed, we are talking about all the resources in a watershed and comprehensive development entailing organic unity. Okay. So hence that is why watershed is very important as a spatial unit for planning. Now watershed development, okay, you can also define, is a comprehensive approach to manage and develop all natural resources, okay, be it the forest resources, soil resources, etc., comprehensively within a particular watershed. We are not only concerned with water resources, we are also concerned about the other resources, because the type of agricultural pattern, the land utilization, the settlement patterns, land conversion, deforestation, etc., all are going to impact the water resources. So we are talking about the integration of, okay, all these resources into our planning approach, and along with that, okay, water conservation, okay, and in conjunction with the other aspects, that is what should be the choice of agriculture crops, we should pursue agroforestry, etc. So we have seen successful examples, okay, like Ralegaon Siddhi, Hivre Bazar. These have been successful examples which have integrated watershed development. Now, why it is important? Because it focuses on organic unity, okay, aspects. That is, we should take this as an entire landscape. We are not talking only about water resources. We are talking about this entire area like a hilly area, for example. Okay. So we are not talking only about the topographical aspects. We're talking about land, we're talking about water, etc. Okay. Now, what are the objectives? Objectives are to improve the productive potential through integrated watershed management. Very important. Okay. To strengthen community based local institutions for promoting livelihoods and watershed sustainability. So, in short term, we are saying that we are focusing on the resources management, right? But in a spatial unit, that is a watershed. But there are long term objectives. The output would be sustainable utilization of water resources, how the water resources are used in longer run, how it is going to impact the livelihood of the population here. Will that increase the per capita incomes? Will it lead to higher HDI indices? Will that emancipate the population in the local area or not? Yes. All these are the objectives which are derived from the watershed development. Okay. So now the successful example that we take is, for example, from Ralegaon Siddhi. Okay. That is, it was taken as a spatial unit for planning, and it has been one of the most successful examples, which is now also replicated across other parts of the countries of world. Okay, that has been so successful. So at a one point of time, okay, the HDI indices that were decimal, very high poverty rates, okay, and literacy rates that were also decimal, but over a period of time with the watershed development planning, okay, the approach for the spatial planning as a unit, watershed development, okay, so hence that has led to addressal of the poverty in that area, and now the HDI indices are much better. Okay, the population is out of poverty, much of the population, very high literacy rates, etc. So HDI indices have improved. So that was the perspective of the watershed development. Okay, as a spatial unit for planning. This is why it is important. So you can include this, that is Hivre Bazaar. Okay. Now when we are talking about watershed as a spatial unit, why it is important? Because it is talking about Natura Ganze. Okay, that unit from the perspective of organic unity, because it is talking about comprehensive development, because we are talking about sustainable development, because there are upper limits to growth, because we need to develop core and periphery. Along with water conservation, it can help us in agricultural diversification, climate resilience. Okay. It can help us in harnessing the potential of local resources. So that is why watershed development, okay, is the most appropriate spatial unit for planning. That is why. Okay, I hope now the context is clear to you. Okay, इस बहुत simple question था, just कि आपको ये ध्यान देना है when we are talking about regional development and planning. Okay, so for example, the idea that is that particular unit, okay, that should be planned in integration, okay, not in silos. For example, the space-time continuing planning principle or the ecological equilibrium that must be utilized when we are planning for a particular region. Okay, so when we are talking about watershed, it is taking into consideration community development, comprehensive development. It is taking into consideration space-time continuum. It is taking into consideration, very importantly, sustainable development, because the development that we are doing now, okay, for example, the case of Marathwada, which can be used here, okay, and also contrasting example, that is of Ralegaon Siddhi. So how the sustainable development model that has led to a holistic development of that particular landscape, whereas the unsustainable model of Marathwada, that is consuming the resources in unsustainable manner, okay, which is breaching the upper limits of growth. Okay. So you can attempt this particular question in this manner. Okay, that is watershed development is very important, okay, for planning for a particular area. Okay. Next question. This is a very interesting question. Some students got confused here, but this is a simple question. Is Northeast India a geopolitical or a geocultural region? Justify your answer. So the answer justification would be both. It is both geocultural and geopolitical. Okay. So this is even from physical settings. This is also from political aspects. Okay. You can associate it with the different units. This is also from physical settings. So interlinkage of different concepts. Now, when we are talking about Northeast region, okay, first of all, is it a geocultural or a geopolitical? So it is also geocultural. Talk about ethnic diversity. Okay, talk about the traditional systems, the culture, language, tribes, etc. Okay, so you must talk about all these aspects because of which it is a unique geocultural region. So it is geo and cultural. So geography and culture integrated in the Northeast region. Okay, you can also give certain examples. Okay, take some districts and give some examples of different you can cultural aspects around this particular region. Okay, so geoculture, for example, integrated rice fish cultivation systems. Okay, integrated farming systems like rice fish cultivation. And to justify this answer you must draw a map. बिना मैप के ये geocultural geopolitical दोनों ही justify नहीं कर सकते. Okay, so draw a map quickly. Okay, some physical aspects and location of specific tribes in those region, 2-3 tribes, their cultural aspects आप बता सकते हो. So integrated farming systems आप पता नहीं. Okay, in Zero Valley. So that is also associated with their geocultural aspect or not? Yes. For example, geocultural कैसे बताओगे? Geo, that is lack of availability of flat lands, lack of availability of resources. So hence they are utilizing the resources in best possible manner. Integrated rice fish cultivation and also part of their culture, because rice and fish, that is a part of their dietary system. So in that patch of land they are doing integrated farming system. So that is geo cultural aspect. So this is a geocultural region. Okay, Vegetation is different, cropping pattern is different, cultural aspects is different. That to depend upon the physical aspects, determinism. Okay. So how determinism and cultural aspects they are integrated. And then geopolitical. Okay. Geopolitical. So geopolitical because Chicken Neck Corridor, the strategic location, rimland aspect, okay, how the infrastructure development, connectivity, and all of that. The political aspect that is also associated with geography. So this is both geopolitical and geocultural. Okay, associated with rimland, geostrategy, Chicken Neck Corridor, some passes, name of some passes, etc. So culture and politics both influenced by geography. So it is both, combination of both, and how it is influencing the development in that particular region. In that manner, you can answer this question. Next question. Discuss the necessary conditions for cultivation of foxnuts and describe its areas of production in India. ठीक है, अब ये आंसर आप कैसे करते हैं इसको मैं आपको हिंट देती हूँ. Now see, fox nuts was in news. Okay. If it was in news, you must have learnt about it कि ये कहाँ प्रोड्यूस हो रहा है. ठीक है. And very large production that is coming from Bihar. अगर इतना भी पता होता बाकी आपका काम हो जाता. ठीक है. थोड़ा सा भी अगर न्यूज़ में पढ़ा होता तो ये आइडिया लग जाता कि अच्छा यार यहाँ पर किस टाइप का हमारा जो एग्रो क्लाइमेटिक रीजनलाइजेशन है, व्हाट वुड बी द कंडीशंस लाइक दैट यू कुड हैव ओके एसोसिएटेड विद इट. जस्ट अगर ये पता होता ये न्यूज़ में है, उसका कल्टीवेशन कहाँ हो रहा है ज़्यादा. फर्स्ट थिंग. ओके, तो कंडीशंस रिक्वायर्ड फॉर कल्टीवेशन एंड एरियाज ऑफ प्रोडक्शन वो न्यूज़ में था तो आपको पता होता. So it was not a tough question. It was directly from current affairs. Okay, what are the conditions? So for example, conditions required are tropical to subtropical climate. Okay, moderate temperatures, annual rainfall 100, 150 like that. Okay, they grow best in stagnant perennial freshwater bodies. Okay, like ponds and wetlands with clay or loamy soils. Wetland ecosystems and oxbow lakes, okay, which is a characteristic of this area. Okay, Bihar. Like Kosi and Gandak, they also provide ideal conditions for foxnut cultivation. So Bihar is the largest producer. Okay, and this was the news which was okay in current affairs. That is agricultural diversification by the cultivation of foxnuts. Okay, so this was the article that was in news. Makhana producing districts. Okay, Sitamarhi, Madhubani, Darbhanga, etc. Just mention 3-4 of them. That would be sufficient, more than sufficient. एक छोटा सा map बना के and ideal producing conditions here. So that is why. And इसके beyond आप एक थोड़ा सा discussion देते हैं इसका regional development and planning के लिए. ये क्यों important है? Because we are talking about foxnuts, agriculture, resources, RDP. Okay, all of that is interlinked. Okay. So in recent times, makhana has been significantly becoming popular in these districts in Bihar. Okay, like Darbhanga, Madhubani, etc. Okay, which are cultivated in waterlogged fields and shallow ponds. And the production accounting for nearly 90% of the makhana exports. Okay, so here, unlike rice or wheat, where mechanization has eased the process, one challenge remains, that is cultivating makhana crops still relies on manual labor. Okay, that is time consuming. So that is one of the challenge. Otherwise it can provide diversification in those areas which have been okay historically dependent upon few crops from the green revolution time period. Okay, so this was the particular question. Next this question. Now this question is from an important theme of urban heat island. Describe the causes of the phenomena of urban heat island. What are the effective measures to deal with this phenomena in India? Okay, so causes of urban heat island. Now this particular okay issue also is regularly in newspapers. This is from contemporary issues or settlements. Okay, the ecological issue also, that is urban heat island. So what would it mean? That there is an heat island in the urban areas. Okay, now why it would happen? Because the localized climatic regulating factors that have been disrupted. So climate okay, which has been modified in the urban areas. So regional climatic changes are being induced. Now why that would happen is because of concretization of the urban areas. So concretization of the urban areas and associated challenges have much been in news. Be it the flash floods, be it the urban heat island. Last year ये बहुत ज़्यादा न्यूज़ में था, अराउंड असम, अराउंड बेंगलुरु एक्सेट्रा. सो हेंस आपको ये पकड़ लेना था एकदम से, ये वहां से थीम आया है. अब इसको इंटरलिंक वे में लिखना है क्योंकि ये 20 मार्कर क्वेश्चन है. तो इसको सिर्फ डिफाइन करके तो कंसेप्ट चलेगा नहीं काम. अर्बन हीट आइलैंड ठीक है. सो अर्बनाइजेशन इज ड्राइविंग द अर्बन हीट आइलैंड फिनोमिना नाउअडेज, ओके, बिकमिंग मोर इंपॉर्टेंट बिकॉज ऑफ क्लाइमेट चेंज एक्सेट्रा. बट इसको आपको थोड़ा सा करंट अफेयर्स के साथ लिंक करना पड़ेगा. कैसे करेंगे हम इसको, थोड़ा सा देखते हैं. एक ये अच्छा सा आपका जो है स्कीमेटिक बन सकता है, दैट इज शोइंग द टेम्परेचर प्रोफाइल. ओके, सो दिस इज अर्बन हीट आइलैंड. तो फिनोमिना क्या है, सिंपल सी बात है. अर्बन एरियाज में there is a heat island, okay, that is the temperature rise that is higher in the urban areas on the account of mostly deforestation. So deforestation, that means there is concretization, and whenever there is concretization, that is increase in built up area. Okay, there is lesser evaporation and the temperature and the precipitation now in that particular area is modified. Now see, whenever you are discussing about this perspective, urban heat island, okay, you can link it with, okay, heat waves, climate change in the urban areas. You must also link it with recent incidences like omega blocking, which have been witnessed in the urban areas, which has caused a lot of, okay, times a sudden rise in temperature. Okay, now because of all of this, what is happening is, okay, that there is a sudden spike in temperature in urban areas, but it is further complicated. Okay, it is further complicated by the other events also which are happening simultaneously in the urban areas. On one hand, urban areas, they are witnessing urban heat islands, omega blocking, but because there is, okay, now a higher moisture holding capacity increases, what happens, there can be a compound impact, that is cloud burst, which is further complicated by flash floods. This is the entire complicated scenario in the urban areas. Okay. Now you can relate it with the urban areas in India which have witnessed such incidences more frequently. Okay. Now this is on the account of excessive possibilism by man. Man acting as a modifier of urban landscapes. As we are transitioning towards higher stages of social capillarity. So this could have been a beautiful interlinkage. आप जो है आंसर में कैसे पेपर वन के साथ लिंक कर सकते थे. Okay. So urbanization, that is associated with higher stages of roster of social capillarity. Okay. So hence cities are becoming significantly more warmed up. Okay. So which is associated with impervious surfaces, building density, human activity and all of that, which is amplified by, okay, climate change, which results into extreme heat risks in urban areas. Okay. Recently this was in news, that is in Kerala. Okay. There has been an initiative that has been launched, which is the Kawaki initiative, that is greening of the landscape with the help of even community inclusion. So scientific plantation, community led scientific plantation, that is Kawaki initiative, that has been initiated to reduce the urban heat island impact in the urban areas. So that is why it was in news also. okay, in a particular region. What are the effective measures to deal with this in India? Now see, this is happening because of the changes in the urban landscape. Okay, so whenever there are changes in the urban landscape, now this is the fringe. This is rural landscape. Now please understand, this is this phenomena which is happening. What do we need to do? That is the question. We need to take effective measures here, but we also need to take effective measures here and here, right? Because this is a continuum. Okay, so what do we need to do? We need to do something here for compact development. So the development should be compact development and not sprawling. And along with that, there should be the green belts, green belt development. Okay, but very importantly, we must also focus on development of green and blue infrastructure. Okay, green blue infrastructure development, for example, restoration of the wetlands, restoration of the forested areas, okay, which are being converted very rapidly, as we have also seen in the case of the eastern ghats. Okay, तो इस तरीके से एक तो यहाँ डेवलपमेंट चेंज होना पड़ेगा, and the planning principle of space time continuum. Okay, along with, okay, horizontal unity, that has to be applied in rural urban development in an integrated manner. तो यहाँ जो लैंड कन्वर्जन हो रहा है उसको रोकना पड़ेगा. That should be planned expansion now, like a planned city extension in a particular area, that should be, okay, designated for the conversion towards the urban settlements. So it would reduce the sporadic and random haphazard expansion. It should be a designated planned extension. Okay, for example, recently we have seen a lot of floods, right? The issue of floods has become, okay, very important these days. Urban floods, what did we see? Did we see much of the news articles with respect to the floods in Noida or in Gurgaon? Did we see much of the floods which are coming, okay, the news articles which are coming from the high altitude areas like Uttarakhand, Himachal? Why didn't we see many of the articles coming from Chandigarh, okay, with respect to floods? Now the answer lies in the type of planning which has taken place in certain areas. Okay, there has been a planning model which was applied before planning and expansion of the urban areas. Now that is quite not possible because already the urban areas have sprawled, expanded. Okay, the only thing that we can do is changing the infrastructure in the urban areas and the hinterland areas. And along with that, we must plan with the space time continuum, anticipating the changes which will happen in the next 20 years, so that such phenomena like urban heat island, okay, and flash floods, that can be addressed. Now you can see, if you are taking into consideration one aspect, how we are dealing with the questions of paper 2. You might be seemingly thinking कि ये तो पेपर 1 की तरह ही लग रहा है, क्योंकि उसको लिखना ही ऐसे है, just with the help of Indian examples, Indian case studies where this is happening. What are the sustainable models? Okay, that examples can be from paper 2, otherwise the discussion will be largely from integrated from paper 1. Thoughts लगाओ, models लगाओ. Okay, आपने sequent occupants आपने नहीं लगाया होगा paper 2 में. Probably you might have not used the concept of organic unity. That is what the objective is. Okay, so this case study was taken in Geographica with respect to Bengaluru. Okay, how urban heat island that has become one of the challenge here. So this was taken up in geography ka. Okay, this you could have included in your answers. Next question. Okay. With reference to transportation and communication network of India, critically discuss. Okay, wait, the question is not typed properly. Let me tell you the question. Okay. With reference to the transport and communication network of India, critically discuss the Sagarmala project. Okay, critically discuss the Sagarmala project. The transportation and communication network, we had dealt this extensively in Geo 300 plus program. इसके ऊपर एक पूरा क्लास किया था हमने. Okay. Taking into consideration the technical concepts from paper 1. Okay, transportation and communication. Now see, the interlinkage has been made from Sagarmala. This could have been a question from hilly areas. Okay, ropeways connectivity, roadways, railways, etc. But this question is entailing Sagarmala transportation and communication. Now see, to set a context here, the transportation systems, they have witnessed changes and the modifications, specifically starting from 1960s, 70s onwards, a lot of changes post 1980s, 1990s. So we could give a historical context, that is post Fordism. With the opening up of the, okay, communication via the waterways, okay, open waters, and similarly with the opening up of the communication routes, transportation communication, Sagarmala becomes an important, okay, aspect in terms of the transportation and communication in case of, okay, in regional development and planning, and along with that, okay, dispersion of growth across different parts of India. So that could have been a context setter कि आपने introduction में ही थोड़ा link कर दिया with the development of transportation and communication, especially via waterways. ठीक है, तो प्रोजेक्ट पोर्ट लेड डेवलपमेंट है, उसके अंडर क्या क्या ऑब्जेक्टिव्स हैं, ये सब बात की बात है. बट ट्रांसपोर्टेशन एंड कम्युनिकेशन कमिंग फ्रॉम द सागरमाला प्रोजेक्ट वाटरवेज, so that is becoming important 1960s 70s post Fordism, and in India's case recently. Okay, so post Fordism, and then you can just quietly mention, थोड़ा सा लिख सकते हो quickly आप फटाफट से, that has led to dispersion of the industries, okay, growth dispersion also across the coastal areas and like that. Definitely India has certain advantages, because of which we are focusing time and again on Sagarmala project. Okay, now what are the objectives of Sagarmala? Port modernization, port connectivity, port-led industrialization, coastal community development. Now discuss this in context of the transportation and communication. These objectives which are entailed from waterways, okay, with respect to Sagarmala, that is port modernization, port connectivity, port-led development, industrialization, coastal community development, and associated with the planning principles and planning theories and models from paper 1 and paper 2. So transportation and communication, that would help in planning principle of horizontal unity, because it would be spatial integration. Okay, planning principle of community development, okay, coastal community development. Theories, planning principles and theories and models talk about core periphery integration. Okay, talk about cumulative causation in the coastal areas, which would help in core periphery linkages. Okay, so this is how you can include the discussions from paper 1 in this question, which was seemingly like a very GS type of question. Okay, so Sagarmala project which has been, okay, focusing on port-led development program, okay, to get the objectives of port connectivity, modernization, etc. Okay, to modernize the ports, enhance connectivity, and boost port-led industrialization and improve the coastal community livelihood. Now you can link transportation communication RDP with okay all these aspects with the spatial integration, core periphery development of satellite towns, primate centers, okay, leading to development of conurbations on the coastal areas, and almost a similar model to the development of the coastal areas conurbation post Fordism in China. We have the demographic dividend, we have the resources, we have the accessibility, we have the initiatives like Sagarmala, we have the advantage of rimland location. So, hence, harnessing the potential of the port led development could lead to the industrialization and moving towards higher stages of Rostov growth. Okay, we have the rimland एडवांटेज वी हैव द रिसोर्सेज एक्सेट्रा. तो एक तो आप कोस्टल रीजन का मैप बना सकते थे, रिमलैंड वगैरह आप ऐड कर सकते हो, एंड ऑल्सो ऐड दैट द स्ट्रेटेजिक एडवांटेज दैट चाइना हैड way back in early 2000s, starting from 1980s 1990s. China also had the same advantage, which now with the help of Sagarmala and the other initiatives that we are taking, we can also have the conurbation development, okay, export based growth in the coastal areas, which can lead to the development of coastal regions and coastal community particularly, okay, conurbation development here. Similarly, the coastal areas advantage that has been harnessed even by hitherto pehle by the Western European countries and also by the northeast part of America. So that potential can be harnessed even by the South Asian economies, by India also. Okay, so India has that strategic advantage. So this article we had discussed in Geographica also. Okay, like China that has been expanding way back from the past 30-40 years into the Indian Ocean, into Pacific region. So similarly, India also has the potential by the Sagarmala. Okay, then you can also talk about the other initiatives that India has taken up. Okay, India being a part of Quad, etc. So you can discuss all those aspects also. Okay, and the Indian Ocean region, why it is important. So we need to harness the potential of the resources, demographic dividend, moving to higher stages of Rostov. That would need, okay, compulsorily initiatives like Sagarmala, etc., other initiatives, how we need to enhance the potential of the port based development, the industrialization, spread of the industries, core periphery linkages, and that can help us in harnessing the potential of projects like Sagarmala, etc. Okay, so this was a simple question, just how you needed to interlink it with the demand of the question, okay, and interlink it with the paper 1 concepts. Next question. What are the key features of sex ratio population in India? Evaluate the impacts of child sex ratio on general sex ratio in country. Key features of sex ratio. So this is from demographic attributes. You can link it with DTM, demographic transition model. Okay. So we had taken up this question. So similarly, you can also start with the current data. That is, for example, NFHS 5 data. So India's sex ratio, that is 1020 females per 1000 males. Okay, that has improved from the last census data. The census data that we had is 943, and this is the NFHS 5 data. What you can do is you can show two graphs. Okay, one graph is for this graph and another graph. So this is child sex ratio. So you can show child sex ratio that has seen a decline. Okay, in the past decades, it has seen a decline, whereas overall sex ratio that has seen, okay, an increment. Although we do not have the recent data from the recent census, but this is the data from the last census. And another diagram showing the spatial distribution as per NFHS 5. Okay, so this is the spatial distribution of the sex ratios. So we also see a regional variability. There is also north-south divide. In some areas, still there is significantly less, okay, overall sex ratio. Okay, So that is the key features of the sex ratio population in India. That is how you would, okay, discuss this particular part of the question. Evaluate the impacts of CSR on general sex ratio. Simple सी बात है. If the CSR is low, that would also be reflected in the general sex ratio. Okay, and that would also impact the fertility rates in the coming decades. Okay, so hence, if there is an adverse child sex ratio, so for example, as we had seen in the past few decades in case of Punjab and Haryana, so that is why the concept of, okay, the brides which were being brought from northeast region into these areas, Punjab and Haryana, because of the adverse child sex ratios. So if it is adverse, that would also impact the total fertility rates in the coming decades because of lesser proportion of females, okay, in the productive age span. So this is basically nothing else but an interlinkage of the demographic attributes and how they are going to impact, okay, the population growth of India in the coming decades. Okay, and you can also discuss about the reasons which are associated with the adverse sex ratios and especially the adverse child sex ratios, be it with the patriarchal mindsets, okay, be it with the associated with the idea that the regions which were, okay, developed post green revolution as agrarian economy models. Now those regions particularly, okay, that required lot of labor force, so hence there was an inclination for a male child, and that time period also saw a lot of feticides, and because of which an adverse child sex ratios. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you. So you can discuss all of these aspects and give the data, recent data. Okay, and you can also give certain case studies where there has been a better, relatively better overall sex ratios and child sex ratios, which is reflected because of the different developmental models which were being pursued across those states, across those parts of country. For example, Kerala, okay, the Kudumshri model, which has led to spatial diffusion of women centric, gender inclusive initiatives, and because of which there has been, okay, higher participation of women across the labor force, better literacy rates, okay, gender rights, and all of that. So, inclusivity approach, because of which also we have seen, okay, an impact on the HDI indices. So, the literacy rates with respect to women, the child sex ratios, the overall sex ratios, they are far ahead, okay, and also comparable to some of the most developed regions of world. So this could have been some of the case studies that you could have included. I hope bachcho you are understanding how we are just using the concepts from paper 1. Here I've used just DTM. You can also use Spencer, Mill, okay, all the concepts from paper 1 here in this particular answer, and try to make it more geographical in nature rather than writing just like a GS geography answer. Okay, now next question. Explain the factors that contribute to droughts in India. Now, when we're talking about factors contributing to droughts in India, okay, with specific reference to food production, distribution, and availability. So, this is the second interlinkage. Okay, so first is factors and drought. So, basically, what are the factors which result into drought? So, droughts, they are natural, deterministic, and also because of possibilistic factors, because of human interventions. Okay, फॉर एग्जाम्पल फूड इज अवेलेबल, फूड सिक्योरिटी के कंपोनेंट्स हमको पता है, अवेलेबिलिटी, एक्सेसिबिलिटी. ओके, सो व्हेन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट फूड सिक्योरिटी, ओके, को ध्यान देना है आपको. अवेलेबिलिटी, एक्सेसिबिलिटी, स्टेबिलिटी, utilization. So that would also impact, okay, hunger, famines, droughts. Now please understand, for example, when we are talking about droughts, इसके साथ में इसको लिंक करते हैं, तब ये पूरा आपका लिंकेज बनेगा. तो सबसे पहले पूछा गया है फैक्टर्स दैट कंट्रीब्यूट टू ड्राउट्स. ओके, So they can be natural, can be anthropogenic. So natural deterministic factors. Less availability of water. Okay. Rain shadow areas. So they are drought prone regions. Anthropogenic because of new Malthusianism. And because we are creating feedback loops. So for example, negative impact on water resources because of overconsumption. The water resources got depleted. So that would also lead to droughts. Anthropogenic droughts हो गया ना वो तो आने वाले time में तो वो तो possibilism हो गया, right? And this is natural, deterministic. Okay, there are certain areas which are having plentiful of water resources because of availability of, okay, the natural rainfall, that is उनका एवरेज रेनफॉल ही उन एरियाज का 200-250 सेंटीमीटर्स है, ओके, लाइक द वेस्टर्न स्लोप्स ऑफ वेस्टर्न घाट्स एंड सिमिलरली द इंटीरियर रेन शैडो एरियाज, राइट? तो नेचुरल भी हो सकता है एंड एंथ्रोपोजेनिक भी हो सकता है. सो दीज आर कॉजेटिव फैक्टर्स. ओके, नाउ माय सजेशन वुड बी ड्रॉ अ मैप. एक मैप बना दो, उसमें रेन शेडो एरियाज दिखा दो, रायलसीमा, मराठवाड़ा एक्सेट्रा, और उसको मार्क करके आप बताओ कि डिटर्मिनिस्टिक रीजंस, drought prone regions, right? And some other areas which have become drought prone, parts of Punjab and Haryana, because of excessive utilization of the water resources. Okay, unsustainable agriculture practices like that. Now see, we know that there are different type of droughts. अब ये आर्टिकल भी न्यूज में था बच्चों. वैसे तो ड्राउट जो है आपका बहुत प्रोमिनेंट टॉपिक है आपके सिलेबस का पेपर 2 का, तो इसमें कुछ ऐसा नहीं है कि ये क्यों पूछ लिया गया. देयर इज नो सरप्राइज. पीवाई क्यों है, बहुत बार ड्राउट्स के ऊपर क्वेश्चन पहले भी आया है. ठीक है. नाउ देयर आर डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ ड्राउट्स व्हिच इज फाइन, बट recently, okay, this article, that is ecological droughts, that was in news. ठीक है, तो ये हमने कवर भी किया था रीड ऑफ द डे में. अगर आप डेली टेलीग्राम चैनल देख रहे होते हैं ज्योग्राफी ऑप्शनल का, तो रीड ऑफ द डे इज बीइंग गिवन टू यू ऑन अ डेली बेसिस. देयर वी हैड कवर्ड दिस आर्टिकल ऑन इकोलॉजिकल ड्राउट. ये न्यूज में था. ओके, सो मेट्रोलॉजिकल, हाइड्रोलॉजिकल, एग्रीकल्चरल, ये आपको पता होगा. सोशियो इकोनॉमिक. नाउ इकोलॉजिकल ड्राउट, ओके, which is defined, okay, by the type of drought which refers to widespread ecological damage, as the name suggests, ecological, caused by lack of soil moisture. Okay? तो क्या मतलब है इसका? Ecological drought defined as an episodic deficit in water availability that drives the ecosystem beyond the thresholds of vulnerability. Now the ecosystem is vulnerable beyond the thresholds. Okay, impacts the ecosystem services. That ecosystem is not able to provide us with the ecosystem services and triggers feedback. Now because that ecosystem is not able to provide us with the services, for example, there is decline in precipitation, which would again impact the soil moisture, and so on and so forth. So that becomes a feedback loop in nature and or human system. So that is an ecological drought. So that was in news. You could have included that also. Now these feedback loops are also because of anthropogenic factors. So hence now the droughts are on the account of natural deterministic and the anthropogenic factors. Now please understand what is this linkage with specific reference to food production, distribution and availability. Simple. When water is not available to us, okay, extended period of dry weather patterns, there is low water supply, okay, that is going to impact the agriculture or not? It will impact the cropping pattern, the choice of crops. It will impact the length of growing period. It is going to impact the irrigation facility. So agricultural drought occurs when a water shortage significantly damages or destroys agriculture crop. When this would happen, okay, leave apart the other type of drought that are definitely going to impact the food supply. First of all, I'm talking about this. Will it impact the food production, distribution and availability? Yes. So it is going to impact the food security and stability of the availability of food resources in the longer run. That is what is happening, especially in parts of sub-Saharan Africa. That is what is anticipated in most parts of the world, especially in the economies which are agrarian economies. Now we also can talk about socioeconomic drought. When a water shortage affects the supply and demand of commodities such as water, food grains and fish. आप समझ रहे हो? अब पानी नहीं है, when there is less available supply of water, that particular commodity automatically, for example, ठीक है, अवेलेबिलिटी इम्पैक्ट नहीं हुआ, प्रोडक्शन तो हुआ राइस का, बट पानी कम है. So water has become costlier. Will that impact the rice production or not? Yes. So again, now the food grain prices might increase, and when the food grain prices will increase, so somebody can purchase, okay, rice for 40 rupees per kg, but when the price of rice is now 80 rupees per kg, somebody cannot afford it. Somebody else can afford it. Now that somebody who cannot afford it will start cutting on the dietary intake, and that can also impact the food security and eventually can be classified as a drought. ठीक है, क्योंकि फूड सप्लाई पे इम्पैक्ट हो गया. ठीक है, so it also impacts the hunger and kind of a famine like a situation, so drought converting into that. Okay, so this was the context of the question. Factors you have discussed and with specific reference to food production, distribution and availability. Okay, so food production especially in those areas like Marathwada, Rayalaseema, etc. Okay, and the other areas where there is already a significant challenge with respect to availability of water, that would significantly be complicated in the coming decades, production, distribution, etc. So how can the agriculture policies resolve this? Now agriculture policies, okay, have to be from the perspective of short term objective, okay, medium term objectives, like what are we trying to achieve in the next 5 6 7 years, or the long term objectives, anticipating what will be the changes in the ecosystems in the different regions on a long term basis. 30 years down the line, what are the predictive models suggesting us? How much temperature rise can be there? Okay, taking that particular gap into consideration कि इतने से इतना proportion rise हो सकता है. और अगर maximum rise हुआ temperature पे, what would be the impact on rice, wheat type of cropping patterns, because that is one of the dominant cropping pattern. What will be the impact on horticulture crops? What will be the impact on fisheries, etc.? Because agriculture is not alone agriculture of rice and wheat cultivation systems. What will be the impact on livestock? So all of that needs to be taken into consideration. So when we are talking about droughts, okay, one is preparedness, okay, one is adaptation, and another aspect that we have already discussed in paper 1, ecosystem restoration. But we have to be prepared for that scenario when the water availability, water resources will be in crunch. Okay, already the demand supply mismatch that is happening, and it is anticipated that the demand will be almost twice than the supply in the coming decades in case of India. Okay, there are multiple projections, multiple reports point out to that. In that case, agricultural policies, okay, that needs to be taken into consideration. Okay, all stages of agriculture, that is sowing, okay, and then harvesting and all of that, cold storages, okay, storage over longer period of time, processing and etc. All of these needs to be taken into consideration. But very important aspect would be the agroclimatic regionalization and agroecological regionalization, because the intensity of droughts, how they are going to impact, will not be same for all parts of country. So that proportion impact would be variable. Here we need to take into consideration the climatic conditions, the regionalization aspect. So agroclimatic regionalization, how we are going to modify the choices of crops and what are the alternative agricultural options that we have. We need to adapt to that. Okay, so those areas where there is a lot of unsustainable cultivation still going on, despite the fact that they are rain shadow areas, drought prone areas, still a lot of sugarcane cultivation, etc. That continues, water intensive cultivation. We need to quickly switch, okay, towards millets, pulses, and all of that. That would also give in the diversification perspective, but we need to adapt. So that should be the part of agriculture policies. Okay, yes, we are focusing on watershed development, okay, Krishi Sichai Yojana, and all of that, Fasal Bima Yojana. Okay, that is fine, but we need to have, okay, into place those measures which will take into consideration the regional perspective, because Here the concept of uh, areal differentiation, that would be very important. So see, for example, this case study also we had discussed. So climate change impacting, okay, these regions. Okay, so this is very important. Okay, this area, for example, Jalna, Bid, Latur, this is already witnessing a lot of challenges. Okay, Vidarbha, Marathwada, etc. So these regions. Okay, so regional approach should be there. We cannot have one stop for all solution. Okay, next, also taking into consideration the cascading feedback loops. Okay, increased temperature, more severe and frequent droughts, stretched crop and soil, so soil desiccation, then higher exposure of soil carbon, okay, increased CO2 emission, again leading to increased temperature. So these type of feedback climatic loops, that would be more visible. Okay, so hence we need to anticipate all of this and take into consideration suitable measures. Next question: what are the causes and consequences of land degradation due to desertification in India? Examine with reference to various regional issues. Again, regional, आगे आपने देखा होगा continuously we have seen so many questions from the regional perspective. So causes and consequences of land degradation due to desertification in India. So desertification itself, that is the land degradation in, okay, subhumid, arid, semi-arid regions. Okay, so hence land degradation, which is arid, semi-arid, okay, dry subhumid regions, that itself is desertification. So definition itself. Now why that is becoming severe is on the account of multiple factors. One we have already studied, land use, land conversion. Okay, that is happening very rapidly. Okay, so LULC modifications, deforestation, okay, overgrazing, conversion to settlement lands, etc. Okay, conversion towards agriculture lands, conversion towards settlement lands, deforestation, all of them that are leading to land degradation. Now take some regional examples and show that. जैसे ईस्टर्न घाट्स का तो पहले पूछा ही गया है, तो आप एक और ले लो, वेस्टर्न घाट्स ले लो, ठीक है, इंटीरियर्स ले लो, स्प्रेड ऑफ द डिजर्टिफिकेशन ले लो, ओके, आपका नॉर्थ वेस्ट रीजन ले लो, राजस्थान गुजरात ले लो, ठीक है, नॉर्थ ईस्ट ले लो. Northeast is one very good example here. Okay, how the land degradation that is happening, that in the future time period, in the coming decades, that can lead to actually land degradation in those areas which were at one point of time, okay, the wettest places, now are witnessing a lot of changes in precipitation and land transformations, land conversions is happening very rapidly across parts of northeast region. Okay, that can be possibly a point which can be included towards the conclusion, and especially the alluvial soil regions, okay, and all of that. So take 4 5 examples and discuss that. So this map we can use arid, semi-arid, subhumid, and land degradation here. Okay, which in future can, okay, even move towards those areas which are currently not classified under such regions, but in future, because of the unsustainable urbanization and how we are converting the land, so that can also modify these particular areas which are currently not under this, but this might happen in the future areas. Next question: examine the validity of blue economy initiatives for India. Elaborate the impacts of this economy on country's development. यार ब्लू इकोनॉमी तो बहुत न्यूज में रहा है, तो ऐसा नहीं हो सकता कि ये कंसेप्ट नहीं पता हो. ब्लू इकोनॉमी कंसेप्ट तो पता होगा. They are asking you specifically on India's development. So blue economy is sustainable use of ocean resources, okay, ocean resources, biological resources, mineral resources, etc., for economic growth, improved livelihoods and jobs, while preserving the health of marine and coastal ecosystem. Simple. Okay, so that is ecological equilibrium. So organic unity. We need to harness the potential of the resources, but nature has the upper limits. Okay, nature provides us with the alternatives. We can choose the alternatives, but nature has the upper limits. If our approach will be only technocentric, then we cannot pursue the blue economy model. What are the advantages with India? India has, okay, the accessibility to coastal areas, port development, okay, islands, territories, okay, we have the coastal wetlands, estuaries, etc., which have their own ecosystem services, mangroves, okay, fishing villages, okay, the navigable rivers and canal lengths, etc. So we have all of this advantage. EEZ, which is around 23.7 lakh square kilometer. So we have this advantage. Okay, we have the capacity of the ports to handle the cargo, but the development should be sustainable on the lines of blue economy initiatives. So here you can use the concept from paper 1. Okay, that is ecological equilibrium. You must use the planning principles. Okay, that is planning in context of social desirability, economic viability, and ecological viability. Okay, so I'll write it down: social desirability, economic viability, and ecological economic viability, social desirability, okay, and ecological equilibrium. Then only the growth will be sustainable as per the blue economy initiatives. Okay, so you can talk about the different initiatives which have been taken up in India. Okay, and talk in context of ecological equilibrium and economic development. Okay, do not talk only in context of the higher stages of Rostov. So blue economy, that would be in context of the development of the industries, manufacturing, okay, which can be spurred in the coastal areas, which is fine, but also taking into consideration the space time continuum. Okay, so otherwise what would happen is the ecological footprint, okay, that would become unsustainable, like we are seeing in the case of China's economic development. Okay, that has not been on the lines of blue economy model. So you can give a counter case study, that is China's development model. Okay, especially with respect to oceanic resources, for economic growth has been lot of unsustainable growth has taken place. Okay, so we cannot develop on the lines of the development which has taken place already in case of China's economic development, or for that matter of fact, you can also give a case of, okay, European countries. They are facing a lot of repercussions because of unsustainable development which took place in Mediterranean region. Okay, there are a lot of repercussions now. For example, because of unsustainable fisheries, unsustainable tourism, unsustainable industrialization, because the blue economy, okay, that was not pursued for harnessing the potential of the ocean resources. So Mediterranean region, that has faced a lot of repercussion, and also around Atlantic. So many native fish species, they are now extinct. Okay, there has been a lot of invasion of these species. Now that is only because we have not taken into consideration the upper limits of the growth. We have harnessed the potential of the resources unsustainably. Okay, be it the fish resources, be it the energy resources, be it the mineral resources. Now when we are talking about deep sea mining, along with that, we are trying to explore the unexplored areas, expansion into unexplored areas. Okay, unexplored, you can say, okay, marine areas, so hitherto which have not been explored for the mineral or the biological marine resources. Now there will be severe repercussions if we will not follow the model of blue economy. Okay, so this was a simple question. Next, while defining the green architecture, discuss its principles and challenges in response to climate change in India. Okay, so this is contemporary issues, environmental management. Now see, green architecture along with, okay, the principles and challenges in response to climate change in India. So context you have to give. For example, okay, you can give the context of urban heat island as well. Okay, the incidences of urban heat island, cloudburst, that is increasing in case of India. So hence, okay, also flash floods. There is requirement of green architecture. Okay. Now when we talk about green architecture, okay, now see, greening of the landscape of the urban areas. So let's go a bit back. Okay. थोड़ा सा इसको आप क्रोनोलॉजिकल सिक्वेंशियल डेवलपमेंट में आप इसमें बात करोगे. Okay. Why this concept and why for India? Why this had become an important aspect? Okay. And now when we are talking for India, because India's development is also now similarly to what happened in the other metropolitan areas. Now see, okay, 1900s, early 1900s, 1950s, 2000s. Okay. Now you need to relate the question with question paper 1 concepts. That is what I'm trying to make you understand. Okay. So regional planning, American school. Okay. Because the dispersion of growth that had happened towards America, a lot of unsustainable development that started taking place, right? Already, which had taken up across Europe. Okay. So now we were talking about unsustainable development because we had witnessed that the cities, they grow and change. So now you can use the concept of Lewis Mumford. The growth of cities, okay, towards Tyrannopolis, megalopolis. So this was the context because of which we were talking about, okay, how the unsustainable development can impact the growth of cities, how it has been like a Tyrannopolis. Okay. So these concepts which are proposed by Lewis Mumford, you can give as a context even in case of India. Okay. So regional development and planning, if not done with respect to space-time continuum, can lead to the conversion of the current day megalopolis and, okay, the metropolis into Tyrannopolis, necropolis, like seen in the case of development across Western countries. Okay. So this can be the context. So timeline, chronological sequential order, that can be used here also. Simple. ठीक है. अब हमने इसकी बात क्यों करी? Because the question that was around the theme of green architecture. One way is you can define the concept, which is, okay, easiest way to do that. आपने define कर दिया तो simple है. What are air masses? Air masses define कर दिया. Otherwise you can give a context because इसका वेटेज ज्यादा है इस क्वेश्चन के मार्क्स का. आपने इसको एक थोड़ा सा सिक्वेंशियली खोल लिया. Then you can mention how the growth has taken a place in case of India as well. Okay. Now you relate it with another concept from paper 1. You can mention similarly in case of India, the growth has been regional primacy. And cumulative causation in metropolitan regions. So regional primacy है, ठीक है, regional primacy, and because of which the growth has been concentrated in few areas, which has led to cumulative causation and lack of dispersion of the growth in the peripheral areas, and these primate centers have grown unsustainably, increasing the, okay, exposure towards the disasters and exposure towards the events are associated with the climate change, like the heat wave events and all of that. So hence there is requirement of pursuance of the principles of the green architecture across different urban areas in, okay, conjunction with the rural urban fringe and the rural and urban areas, okay, in continuity. So we need to propose the idea that why this is needed. तो ये कंटेक्स्ट का एक एग्जांपल हो गए. कंटेक्स्ट वाले जो क्वेश्चन होते हैं जिनमें आप कंटेक्स्ट दे सकते हो हिस्टोरिकल बैकग्राउंड से कि कैसे डेवलपमेंट हुआ. ठीक है. हाउ वी कैन प्रपोज दैट दिस डेवलपमेंट हैपेंड इन अदर पार्ट्स ऑफ द वर्ल्ड एंड दैट इज ऑल्सो हैपनिंग इन केस ऑफ इंडिया. दैट इज वाई द टर्म रीजनल प्राइमेसी. और जहां जहां पे भी आप ये कंसेप्ट यूज कर रहे हो वहां पर आप थिंकर्स के नाम भी ऐड कर सकते हो. सिंपल सी बात है. ठीक है. दैट इज वाई द नीड फॉर ग्रीन आर्किटेक्चर. ओके. So green architecture, that is the philosophy of architecture, as the name suggests, to utilize the sustainable energy resources. तो सस्टेनेबल रिसोर्सेज यूज करने हैं हमें. Okay, conservation of energy, another important principle, conservation of energy, because we have the upper limits to growth, the reuse circularity model, and safety of building materials, that is the resilient architecture, and sitting of a building with consideration of its impact on the environment. So we are talking about the landscape. This is organic unity, very important. So another principle, that of organic unity. So the energy that we are using, that is not okay infinite. We must diversify towards the sustainable utilization of energy and towards those resources which are renewable in context. Okay, localized resource potential, for example, we can use the localized resources like geothermal, okay, solar, wind, etc., like that. And very importantly, we are also talking about conservation of energy and circularity. Okay, so here probably after the introduction, after this discussion, you can also use those models which have been successful. Okay, like example, taking into Q the example of Ireland. Okay, Ireland dependent upon geothermal energy development. Germany's model, okay, solar and wind, transition towards solar and wind, like that. Term was simple, just that probably आपको strike नहीं हुआ होगा कि 20 marker में क्या लिखना है. Then you would have struggled in this answer. Otherwise, this question could have been easily attemptable. Okay. Next, McHugh, who founded the Department of Landscape Architecture at the University of Pennsylvania, laid the ground rules for green architecture in his book Design with Nature in 1969. So from here the concept came. Okay. Envisioning the role of human beings as stewards of the environment, he advocated an organizational strategy called the cluster development that would concentrate living centers and leave as much natural environment as possible to flourish on its own term. Okay, but this is what we have seen. Okay, as a vanishing concept now. This is kind of an ideal city nowadays, but this is the idea that can be utilized for making the cities sustainable again. Okay, in lines with the organic unity planning principle. Okay, so this was the idea around this particular question. I've just given you a cue how you could have included some of the discussions from paper 1. Now next question on the development of island territories is something which you would have anticipated, because island territories have been much in news. With reference to typical examples, assess why regional planning in India is important for island territories for their sustainable development. Why it is necessary? Okay, because okay, when we are अच्छा इसमें देखो, आपको ध्यान देना है आइलैंड टेरिटरीज में. सिर्फ ऐसे मत बना दो यार, मैप बना के अंडमान और लक्षद्वीप ऐसे जस्ट डॉट डॉट दिखा दिया, उससे कुछ पता नहीं लगता है कि आप ज्योग्राफी से आंसर लिख रहे हो ऑप्शनल से. तो कुछ आइलैंड्स के नाम आप लिख सकते हो थोड़ा सा एक पर्सपेक्टिव देने के लिए. ठीक है, सिमिलरली हियर एंड यू कैन ऑल्सो टॉक अबाउट द प्रोजेक्ट दैट हैज बीन मच इन न्यूज. ओके, you can also mention about that. Okay, and why it is necessary both in positive and negative context. That is, it is necessary for a sustainable development in future, but negative in the context that sustainable development, okay, that is not happening currently. The island territories are under a lot of pressure, and IPCC 6th report clearly mentions about these island territories as climatic hotspots. Okay, in wake of sea level rise, Lakshadweep could be completely submerged. It can be wiped off of the map itself. Okay, it has been designated as a climatic hotspot also because of the coral reef bleaching. So hence, why it is needed? Because of the unsustainable development which is happening currently, and we need to develop it sustainably in the future. So that is why it is necessary. And propose what are the sustainable solutions. Okay, so in that context, why it is necessary. So future growth, we should be focusing on vertical unity, vertical planning. Okay, vertical unity planning, space time continuum, And currently, the development which is happening simultaneously parallel to the development of the urban plain areas, plain mainland areas. So that development cannot happen in the island territories because of limited spatial areas, because of ecological fragility, biodiversity hotspot regions. Very importantly, okay, they are vulnerable to climate change and disasters. Please understand that there has been a rise of the sea surface temperatures and which has also been associated with an increasing frequency of the disasters in the past few years, okay, like the increasing frequency of tropical cyclones, etc. Okay, so vulnerability to climate change and disasters, that is increasing. So that is why the need, ठीक है, why the need को आप ऐसे समझो, why do you need to study? Because I want to clear the UPSC examination, okay, because I want a good job, okay, I want to get a good profile in the working area, etc. So hence, similarly, why do we need regional planning in a particular area? Because currently the planning which is happening, which is probably not that sustainable, and in the future there will be the limits of growth. So hence, that is the need why we need to do the planning. But very importantly, when we are talking about planning, we cannot propose the planning models that we are implementing in the plain urban areas in the mainland. These are small spatial territories, very small territories, and ecologically fragile territories. Very importantly, there are also tribal communities who are residing in the remote interiors. Okay, so taking into consideration all those perspective and the limited agriculture prospects, limited prospects for industrial development, we can only promote the development from the perspective of locally available resources. So locally available resources which are limited from the perspective of agriculture, coconut plantation, coconut processing, okay, etc. And very importantly, टूरिज्म पर्सपेक्टिव्स, देयर आर लॉट ऑफ टूरिज्म पर्सपेक्टिव्स. पहले ही नॉटिकल टूरिज्म का क्वेश्चन आ चुका था, थोड़ा सा अगर आप हिंट लेते तो आप इंटरलिंक कर सकते थे. और अगर आपने ध्यान से देखा होगा पेपर, एक बात आपको क्लियर हुआ होगा कि अक्रॉस द आंसर्स फ्रॉम वन क्वेश्चन यू कैन टेक अ हिंट टुवर्ड्स द अदर आंसर इन स्पेशली पेपर 2. दूसरा आंसर वहीं से डिराइव होने लग जाता है ना. तो इस तरीके से फॉर देयर सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट apply the planning principles. Planning principle of vertical unity and planning principle of ecological equilibrium will be very important here. And when we are talking about development, growth pole development, so hierarchical growth pole, small growth centers can be feasible here on the basis of locally available producers I mentioned. Okay, coconut processing, tourism based activities can be one type of industrial development. So tourism industry, sustainable tourism industry. Okay, and very importantly, we can develop the tourist circuit. So planning, regional planning development taking into consideration tourist circuit. Okay, ये पूरा circuit cover हो जाए from Andaman to Lakshadweep, like that, something like that. Okay, taking into consideration also, okay, circuits towards maybe Sri Lanka or Maldives, like that. Okay, and very importantly, harnessing the potential of the local resources like fisheries, that has not been done completely yet, and there have been multiple reports which have also highlighted, okay, that deep sea fishing, the potential has not been completely harnessed, so we can also pursue that. So all these perspectives needs to be taken into consideration, and fisheries processing industries, etc., that can also be set up here. So island territories for sustainable development. Okay, so we had taken up multiple questions. I'm just telling you one question. Okay, that is, you can implement the principles of planning principle here. Okay, show some regional maps. Okay, and implement the concepts from paper 1. This is also rimland, so you can use that concept. Okay, accessibility to seas and all of that. Now this question, so for me the 8th question was a very nice question to attempt, because ये इंटरनेशनल बाउंड्रीज वाले क्वेश्चन के अंदर आपके पास बहुत कंटेंट होता. विद रेफरेंस टू इंटरनेशनल बाउंड्रीज ऑफ इंडिया, डिस्कस द रिलेटेड इश्यूज गिविंग सूटेबल एग्जांपल्स. ओके, तो रेफरेंस टू इंटरनेशनल बाउंड्रीज ऑफ इंडिया, डिस्कस द रिलेटेड इश्यूज. तो इसको आप स्टार्ट कर सकते थे विद डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ जियोपॉलिटिकल बाउंड्रीज ऑल्सो. तो बाउंड्रीज आपको याद होगा पेपर 1 से सुपर इम्पोज एक्सेट्रा, वो कंटेक्स्ट भी आप दे सकते हो यहाँ पे. ठीक है. And international boundaries, you can also use the concept of rimland here. Okay, accessibility to rimland, assertiveness of China, तो वो context भी बन जाता है. ठीक है. अच्छा, इंटरनेशनल बाउंड्रीज ऑफ इंडिया. अब रीसेंट इश्यूज भी आप इसमें इंक्लूड करते, पीछे एक साल में बहुत सारे डेवलपमेंट्स हुए हैं, एंड इन द पास्ट 2-3 years lot of developments. So use the contemporary examples to justify this answer very simply with the help of map. Okay, boundaries of India and map. So my suggestion would be, what you can do is show the different disputed regions in case of India, China, India, Pakistan, etc. Some recent issues that had arisen with respect to even Nepal, for that matter of fact. So just mention those aspects. Okay, mention the areas which are, okay, administered by other country but claimed by India and the other country as well, like that. And very importantly, what are the issues? Okay, तो उसको आप हिस्टोरिकल कंटेक्स्ट कर सकते हो, हिस्टोरिकल इश्यूज, या फिर ऐसे कर सकते हो विद रिस्पेक्ट टू सेपरेट कंट्रीज, इंडिया, चाइना, इंडिया, पाकिस्तान, लाइक दैट. ओके, एंड देन द कंटेम्प्रेरी इश्यूज, अभी जो रिसेंट 1-2 साल में हुए हैं, तो आप ये वाले पक्का इश्यूज आप करोगे. ठीक है, नेपाल वाला, ठीक है, काला पानी एक्सेट्रा, देन इशू ऑफ गलवान. ठीक है, द इशू दैट हैड टेकन अप विद रिस्पेक्ट टू दिस पर्टिकुलर रीजन, ये वाला भी आप लेंगे एक थोड़ा सा. ठीक है, अरुणाचल प्रदेश वाला, और ये गलवान वैली हॉटस्पॉट, ये तो आप अच्छे से डिटेल में डिस्कस करेंगे, skirmishes etc. तो गलवान वैली हॉट स्प्रिंग्स and this area Chushul, okay, Demchok, Chumar, etc. This area, and India Pakistan recent skirmishes in the last year. Okay, and historical background, start somewhere from 1950-60, थोड़ा सा context दे सकते हो, and then you can discuss this aspect. एक इसमें आप एडिशनल जो कर सकते हो, थोड़ा सा एक एड ऑन पॉइंट कर सकते हो, दैट इज विद रिस्पेक्ट टू द नॉर्थ ईस्ट रीजन. Okay, because of the cultural affinity, okay, of the population which is located here in the northeast region, so there is an additional challenge, that is there is a cultural affinity across the borders, so that also leads to a bit of centrifugal forces operating. Okay, वो भी आप थोड़ा सा एक एड ऑन कर सकते हो. बाकी तो आपको पता ही है सारा इशू जो है. ठीक है, आप उसको विद मैप आप डिस्क्राइब कर सकते हो. So mostly on the account of the changes that have taken place historically and in the recent times, and what are the differences in the opinion with respect to both the countries, with respect to the statements, and it is already, okay, been acknowledged that although the areas, for example, okay, when we are talking about the territories which have been captured and occupied by China, okay, but it is an integral part of Indian territory, like that. You can just discuss the challenges, or also you can discuss it in the context of the deterministic aspect, that is currently also when we are talking about the international boundaries. Okay, one important issue is technological interventions because of deterministic challenges. Okay, so high altitude areas, they have lot of physical deterministic challenges. Okay, navigation becomes a challenging, daunting task. Okay, and also certain boundaries which cannot be traced. Okay, in that scenario कि वहाँ से incursions अगर हो रहे हैं, ठीक है, तो that cannot be traced in such harsh conditions. That is one important aspect, and you can also include, for example, one case on Siachen. Okay, that very high altitude areas, very difficult to deploy the armed forces. The geographical context आपको देना है पूरा मैप से बना करके. Okay, the deterministic challenges. Okay, high altitude areas, glaciated areas, okay, glaciated landforms, so monitoring and surveillance of these boundary areas, that becomes difficult. Okay, the areas which are separated by transboundary rivers. Okay, so like that you can discuss this particular answer. Okay, giving suitable examples with the help of map. So political aspects, boundaries of India, और recent जो अभी हमारा पाकिस्तान इंडिया इशू रहा है in this year, you can also discuss that, and also include the discussion on China's expansion specifically. Okay, so China's expansion, CPEC, and China's assertiveness in this region, and the recent India Pakistan context. All of that is to be seen in the context of expansion of China towards the Indian Ocean region. Okay, this is also associated with the aspect of rimland. Okay, who has the accessibility to Indian Ocean region, that would be having a certain strategic advantage. So India has a geostrategic advantage here, which China is also trying to capitulate. Okay, trying to have an accessibility. via the canals, via this initiative of CPEC, String of Pearls, etc., Silk Road into the Indian Ocean region. So that also is conflicting towards the interest of, okay, India's territory, because CPEC goes through the POK region. Okay, uh, so hence all these dimensions you need to integrate. Okay, probably discussing it with the help of political boundaries and rimland context and Indian Ocean region, String of Pearls, etc. ये अगर आप नहीं इंक्लूड करोगे तो आंसर फिर आपका जीएस आईआर का आंसर बन जाएगा. ठीक है, जीएस के आईआर में भी तो ये सेम क्वेश्चन आ सकता है. So how you can differentiate it from the GS answer is by using all these terminologies, especially from paper 1. Okay, so I hope you understand now how we can make such answers in paper 2 geographical in perspective. But if you have attempted papers either from paper 1 or paper 2, you can show me your answer scripts at the Delhi Center, where I will evaluate your scripts. Okay, I'll give you feedback how you have written the answers. Okay, you can show your scripts at the Delhi Offline Center. And also, very importantly, I wanted to make an announcement, that is, many students were asking about the answer writing. So we are beginning with the answer writing program, okay, from the perspective of enrichment and test series, which is beginning from 15th of the September. Here the objective is that on a daily basis, we'll be providing you with certain set of questions, handwritten model answers, discussion videos. Also, there will be live classes of enrichment, okay, on the basis of different units and question answer. So you will learn the integration of different concepts, thinkers, etc., like we have done across the analysis of these papers. Similarly, we'll be doing that for all the units. And then you will learn how to make your answer geographical in nature, how to do certain enrichment of the thinkers, thoughts, etc. So in that manner, we will continue the classes. Okay, from 15th of the September, the batch is beginning in the offline as well as online mode. So offline classes can be availed at the Delhi Center. Okay, and parallelly with the enrichment, the model answers, all of that, that answer writing practice, there will be 14 sectional tests, 14 tests, 10 sectional and 4 full in test. Okay, and which will be available throughout the year. So you can give the test, take the feedback, and learn the answer writing. But also along with the test, we'll be giving you the weekly answers, weekly question and answer. So you can write those questions and answer and submit the answers. Almost 2-3 questions on a weekly basis on which you can write the questions and answer. And apart from that, if you're writing more answers, PYQs, etc., you can also get them evaluated and take the feedback. Okay. So this entire program will run into around about 3.5 months, but the accessibility will be throughout the year. If you are interested to join in the Geo 300 plus program, test series and enrichment batch, which is beginning from 15th of the September, you can click on the link which is given in the description box. Okay, so that is all with respect to the discussion of Geography Optional Paper 2. I hope now you have understood about the interlinkages between the different concepts and across the papers. Hello, that is all for today's discussion. Thank you.